I'd like to call the meeting to order. Thank you everyone for being here, and I'll now turn it over to Dr. Rayleigh to begin the program.
Yeah. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for spending some time with us this afternoon on some very important topics, ultimately, that are going to inform our work moving forward related to capital improvements and our facilities, and just some really important work for our community. And really excited about the opportunity to have some conversation with the board and with staff and be able to get some ideas out on the table, have some conversation, and ultimately a lot of discussion today. As we built the agenda from a staff standpoint, there are some segments of the agenda where we want to provide some information, but ultimately allow the board to have time to have some conversation and discussion. I do want to thank Dr. Armstrong and members of the school board and the school board staff who are here, as well as county staff who are here, and continual thanks to our community for being engaged in the work of our community. I've been a part of some of these work sessions in the past, and we have not had this level of attendance, so it's great that we have a lot of folks here. And so, as this truly is a work session, we're rolling our sleeves up and ultimately talking about a lot of important topics. Staff are here at the table and around in order to answer any questions that we may have. And so, huge thanks to the team, specifically Carla, who has really led this effort to get us prepared for today, and just grateful to have the opportunity to work shoulder to shoulder with a lot of tremendous professionals who are dedicated to the work here. So our goal for today, just to set the table a little bit, is ultimately to begin a conversation about priorities. And so as we transition to the next slide, I want to ask the board members to maybe share their thoughts on a few things, kind of set the stage and set the table. As I'm still transitioning in this role, I haven't yet made it 3 months, so feeling pretty good about where we are right now. But I have not had the chance really to have conversation with board members in great detail about some of the philosophical and foundational beliefs associated with capital improvements, and feeling that will be important to really set the stage for our work and find some common threads and some common themes ultimately that can help us jumpstart into this work into the future. And then Carla's going to spend some time talking about our current financial position and where we are right now from a cash standpoint, from a financing standpoint, and then allow the board some time to have some discussion about that, ask some questions, and ultimately maybe provide some clarity for our public. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about where we are in some current projects right now, what the board approved in April of last year for the current fiscal year. Spend some time talking about some of our short-term project needs that we have right now. Ask some questions of the board, see if we can gain some consensus potentially about next steps on those, and then forecast forward what we need to start to plan and prepare for from a financial standpoint in the next couple years, maybe some more short-term projects beyond the current fiscal year, and then give Dr. Armstrong and his team a chance to have the floor to share their needs as we move forward. And ultimately, you can see we have some discussion built in. So we do have 3 hours together, and likely we'll take a break somewhere in between for us to catch our breath a little bit, but do want this to be collaborative and have a lot of dialogue along the way. So I figured I'd get us kicked off by asking the board members to share their thoughts briefly. We've allocated about 15 minutes on these topics. What are our beliefs related to the capital improvement plan? What should we be spending our dollars for when it comes to capital improvement in our community, and what do we think really doesn't apply for a capital improvement plan? Maybe it's more operational in nature, but as we think about the next several years of our work together, how do we want to spend our dollars for capital improvements? What should we be focusing our dollars on there? And then asking the question too about how we should fund projects in the future. And so that will transition into the financial elements of our work. But just wanted to get some background information and hear directly from board members about what you think about these topics related to our CIP. So I don't know who may be interested in going first.
I think the chair usually starts.
Well, it's not to be a surprise to any of my colleagues. I guess I would place my priorities in short-term, intermediate term, maybe long-term. Short-term, of course, as we all know, citizens are aware of, we've got 2 fire stations, a courthouse, and I would add to that a CTE element in that for the schools. So those, I think, would be somewhat of a immediate or short-term CIP need, and then maybe right after that, on the heels of that, would be some additional things that we think we can do in the eastern end of the county. You know, we're aware that we need to pay some attention to that area of Parks and Rec. Longer term would be additional schools, perhaps. So I would, you know, get an assessment of where we are financially, and, you know, if you want to answer the second question of how would we fund this stuff, I think that would require some more discipline on our part as to whether we go out immediately and borrow, but certainly we need to consider that. So there you go.
Thank you, Mr. Wood.
Guess I'm next. So I kind of am with Tom on, you know, long-term versus short-term. And I think that the long-term, we need to be funding long-standing infrastructure. Not, you know, I don't think that, I don't know, redoing a park, you know, I don't think that would, I would consider that operational. Incidentals, operational. But when it comes to like the courthouse, you know, hard infrastructure, something that's gonna last 25, 50 years or 100 if we're lucky. I think that definitely needs to fall under the CIP plan.
Okay.
And how it should be funded, I would like it to be funded by our, you know, what we bring in with economic development. But I also, on that note, I think that we should also be funding economic development with CIP and getting some of the, you know, some site readiness to bring in, kind of create a self-sustaining funding.
Good. Thank you.
That's all I've got.
I appreciate that.
So, you know, I don't think of the CIP much different than I look at the budget. It's what the citizens have said is their priority: public safety, education. So I think looking at those two, and I like the list of projects that we had, so I think that's an important lens to look at. The public says, we look at government, we look at public safety and education. I do believe, kind of piggybacking on Mr. Christie, you know, I think we've got some really talented people on this board that are what I would call more entrepreneurial than I am, and they see opportunities. I get concerned when those opportunities seem sort of reactive. I'd like us to figure out, is there a way to potentially know that we're going to be looking for opportunities, whether it be, you know, purchasing property for economic development, to improve the site readiness, to help with the funding on a commercial aspect, so that if things pop up, that there's money set aside for that. And maybe there already is, we just have to figure out how to rename some current reserve fund or something.
Right.
I do feel like we need to have a discussion as a board on services to the east end of the county. The east end of the, and for everybody that doesn't know, I'm more central western part of the county. But the east end of the county pays a huge portion of our taxes. I think we deserve to have services there. And I want to have intentional conversations about that, not just, hey, something came up, let's jump on it. Let's plan for, hey, if we want to have, you know, there's pros and cons to having accessibility to the government services in the East End. You know, we had a meeting the other night, and I wanted to ask how many people in that meeting had actually been this far west in Goochland. And there were, I don't think many hands would have went up. So there's pros and cons to it, but I would love to have that deliberate discussion. I do think the CIP should be for one term, or for single expenses, not ongoing expenses.
Okay.
However, I see a gap in how we plan, because in the past, I've sat in this room for this meeting, and we've seen people in the CIP. We're gonna need 12 people to staff Station 7, per se. I feel like we need to account for that somewhere where we don't. So I think looking at a longer operational plan, looking out more than 1 year, especially when it comes to staffing. So if we know if the county gets a certain milestones or certain potential growth areas, that's going to say, well, that's going to trigger the need for another building inspector. That's going to trigger a need for somebody in the treasurer's office or the commissioner of revenue, so that it's more formulaic and that we're being more well managed in that aspect of it. That's all.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Spinhour.
So I appreciate my colleagues mentioning getting more services to the east end of the county first, I'll say that. But I was looking at, what I view as my mission in service to Goochland as a supervisor. And I encapsulate it as continuously improve Goochland's revenue generation in order to provide best-in-class services and facilities without raising tax rates. So what I stress as it relates to CIP is best-in-class services and facilities. And so that means facilities that we expect to last 50 years, facilities that we expect in 20 years to have people proud and thrilled to be coming to work in them. And what does that require? That requires additional investments up front to make sure that we are building to a standard that is best in class. And so, this came out of a lot of visits to courthouses that our previous county administrator planned, and I was able to make several of them. And the most frustrating thing to hear from all of those different sites were county staff, these various counties saying, gosh, 3 and 4 and 5 years in, gosh, I wish we'd thought of that. Or we really don't like this, or we've outgrown this. And that is not only a lack of foresight, but oftentimes I think it's a lack of vision in what the financing requirements need to be to set yourselves up to provide facilities that stand the test of time. And so we are in a new paradigm. Goochland Elementary School is a great example. Schools and best-in-class facilities cost more. That is the federal government's creation, not Goochland County's. We are here to solve the problems that these other macroeconomic players have created. So we have to accept that it costs more to deliver these facilities and these services. How can we do that? Well, to go into the second question, I think that we can do that with by leveraging our AAA rating, by making effective use of it to make sure that if the market is offering us 3% money because of that great rating, and we can put that on a 25-year, 30-year payback schedule, that it aligns with the usage of these facilities that we hope to bring on board. And then additionally, we have to draw the line right now, or as soon as possible, to say, this is the way it's been done in the past. This is not going to be the way it happens from now moving forward. And I will say that in relation to deferred maintenance. We have a history of deferred maintenance building up in this county, and for lack of a better term, kicking the can. And a pay-as-you-go system can create that. And while it's great that I applaud all the people who have been able to operate Goochland County in the past with a pay-as-you-go model. But given the cost that we have for these, if we want to maintain best in class, given the cost that we see right now, we can't just rely on a pay-as-you-go model. And so I think we've got to leverage what we've already got. The beauty is we've already got that thanks to previous supervisors, and that's a gift that we need to utilize. But we need to do everything we can on a daily basis to continuously improve our business generation by being a place that, our revenue generation by being a place that businesses want to come to, and not putting it on residential taxpayers. So, and then finally I would add, because Neil touched upon this, we do need to look at human capital investment. And I stress human capital. That does not get looked at in CIP enough. And yes, it naturally falls in operating expenditures. But things like a new fire station, things like a new school require an immediate uptick in the expenditures that we bear. Let's not pretend that it just gets dumped into the operating expenditure line and it's immediately solved. That's not showing foresight. Let's think of, okay, we need to go out and attract 20 more, and I'll state this again in probably 15 times, best in class faculty for this school so that we can be prepared. And we've really got to look at bricks and mortar are great, and let's build the best facilities we can, but we've got to stress human capital's importance being bigger than just bricks and mortar. And how are we going to continue addressing that? So that is my thesis on politics.
Very good.
Thank you, Mr. Waters. Mr. Lau?
Well, it's 18 after the hour. You said we're going to do 15 minutes, so my time is up.
No, keep going. We want to hear your voice.
Well, you gotta be careful what you ask for. CIP for me is long-term assets and long-term financing. And if an asset has less than 5 years shelf life, I would call that an expense, not capital improvement. And I'm going to be maybe a little more philosophical. If we give government money, it will stay. And frankly, I take the approach, I want to tax less and spend less. There are some things that I think government is not the answer, and I look to Gooch and Cares as being a wonderful example of a private sector enterprise providing a lot of resources to our community. And yes, they do receive some government assistance, but they are private sector. As has been mentioned, and Mr. Waters kind of set the bar a little low. He said he wants a 50-year lifespan on a building. Courthouse is 200. So, I think we've gotten our money's worth and a little more there. But again, going back, if it's going to be with us for more than 5 years, I think it is a candidate for capital improvement, long-term financing. And I take the approach of long-term financing because as we pay out of current revenues, every taxpayer today is buying an asset for the person who moves here next year or 2 years from now. That person does not have to pay a penny for that fire truck. Doesn't have to pay a penny for any of those resources that we have put on the table. And I like to think that the people getting the benefit of those resources are going to help pay the freight. And that would be the longer-term financing for longer-term assets. So if we are putting resources on the table that are going to be financed over 15, 20 years, that debt service is going to be paid by the people who live in the county 15 years from now. And if somebody sells their house and moves out of the county, they aren't leaving a gift for the person who bought the house and moved in behind them, because the people getting the the services are the ones paying for it. I look at government's role as public safety, transportation, and education. We do not have as much wherewithal on transportation as I would like to see us. That is somewhat shifting with the CBTA monies coming into us, but I think that if there's 3 things that I get phone calls on is the ad valorem tax, I get phone calls on the assessments, and I get phone calls on transportation and other things too. I got a call about people upset that the wildflowers were being sprayed when the bees were still needing them to pollinate. So I took one for the team on that. So, and as has been mentioned, we need to grow the pie. We have an opportunity. We're 28,000 population. I hope, I know Weldon Cooper says we're going to be 40,000 in 10 years. I hope that's not the case, because I don't know that we have the wherewithal to handle that kind of exponential growth. But be it as it may, 28,000 is sort of the sweet spot. We've got enough critical mass that we can do a lot of good things, but we're not so unwieldy that we're turning more of a PT boat perhaps than we are an aircraft carrier. So I've talked about tax less, spend less, grow the pie. Long-term assets would be more than 5 years. If we're going to look at sheriff's cruisers, I don't know, I'd put them in CIP, I'd expense those. And I think human capital is an expense. It's ongoing because people do come and go. Sometimes we have a smaller staff, not often, but on occasion we have less staff than we do previously. So I'm not sure if that's helpful, but I am now 22 minutes after the hour, so.
I took some time at the beginning, but that has been very helpful. So thank you for helping, I think, to set the stage for the work. And, you know, all of you have shared your perspective on this, but there are commonalities if you listen. I really worked hard to take notes of some things that were shared amongst all of you, and that's being thoughtful, that's being deliberate in our work, that's planning ahead, that's looking short term, that's looking long term. There may be a role for financing in the work to meet the needs of our community in the future. For what? Length, those kind of things, like all those variables need to be determined, but there may be a role for financing potentially in our work. And then the need for East Town services was referenced amongst a few of you as well. So there were common themes in your work, and so appreciate the time to be able to hear directly from you, because ultimately that's going to inform today's work and future work that we as staff on your behalf will continue to do. So that being said, I wanted to transition into some of the finances of the county at this point in time. I want to turn this over to Carla, who's really done some work to be able to talk about our current financial position for the benefit of the board and for our public who's here today and watching at home.
And the good news is, I don't think this will take 30 minutes, so this will get us our time back. We are in Goochland, we are in a very strong cash position right now, so I wanted to take a high-level look at how much money we have in the bank. Our fund balance is our assets minus our liability. My best prediction at this time, this is unaudited, but we'll have about $65 million of fund balance at June. We had that at June 30. Since our focus is CIP today, I wanted to lay out the pots that we have to determine where this fund balance will sit. We have non-spendable funds, restricted funds, committed funds, and then what I want you to focus on is that assigned funds. We actually have $32 million of different projects that we have thought about for the future, and we're aware that they're occurring. We know we're going to need to fund them. In the papers in front of you, everyone sitting around the table, I do have the breakdown of what is within that assigned balance. But the main focus is there's $17 million within that assigned that we have laid out for future capital projects. So we can feel safe saying if we needed $17 million towards any of these projects, we have that set aside in our assigned fund balance. We also have an unassigned fund balance that we can spend as we need to of $29 million. The way this is laid out, we do meet our fund balance policies, which is 25% of the future year's budgeted expenditures is in unassigned. And then between unassigned and assigned together, we have a 35% available fund balance policy target. We are way above that. So we have a lot of money sitting here. We have more than $20 million than we need to just meet our 35% available fund balance. We're sitting at 52% right now. So we're in great shape there.
That's with the lower target from this year, correct?
Correct.
I was going to mention that.
Yes,
We
we had
have
had it at
adjusted
60,
downwards.
and this is at the lower of 35. And even at 35 being our target, we're still sitting at 52%. So we're in between those two. This is the focus on general fund. Another piece of money that we need to keep in mind in relation to CIP projects is our proffers. These are collected throughout the year, and they are put in the CIP fund. So they are in addition to general fund money. We have proffers collected prior to July 1 of 2016. You can see highlighted in the orange. They have no geographical limitations. So I wanted to focus in on, since we're going to be talking about Station 7, a fire department or a fire station, we can use those old fire proffers towards anywhere in the county, and we've got a little over 100,000 there. And then in the East End fire proffers, we have almost 900,000 there. So between those two, we have $1 million more just sitting in proffers that we could allocate towards a new fire station. But also to keep in mind that between schools, parks, fire, roads, we do have these proper monies, and we can, you know, keep up with the balance monthly. So even though our focus is on general fund, because the general fund is what mainly funds all of our CIP currently, we need to also focus on TCSD because we have a portion of our general fund, the amounts listed right here, that actually, based on a revenue sharing agreement, annually gives about $2.8 to $4 million over the past 3 years to the TCSD fund to pay off that debt.
Carla?
Yes.
That is 55%, is that correct?
Yeah, it's based on a formula, so it's 55% of certain residential and commercial properties. And our assessor does a good job of a big spreadsheet that calculates it all. But yeah, it's called a 55% revenue sharing formula. And it turns out to be right under $4 million recently. And currently, we have $78 million of debt outstanding. So why do we want to pay these off? Everyone wants to pay these off. Paying them off is a win-win for both the taxpayers and the TCSD district, obviously. That will eliminate their ad valorem tax, which I know there has been a lot of discussion on when are we going to pay this off. But it will also help the county to pay this off early because we won't have to keep funding from general fund. That will free up over $4 million going forward. And this continues to grow because the assessed value grows within the TCSD. So that'll free up a lot of money annually that the general fund can use for our operations, but for CIP if we choose to. So what we are doing to accomplish this is looking, every year we look with our financial advisors of how can we do an early payoff? Because if you go by just the debt amortization schedules of the debt within TCSD, we wouldn't pay it off until 2042. We looked at callable dates of these outstanding bonds, and in December of 2024, we were actually able to prepay $18 million. So we did a defeasance of this debt. What that did is bump up the expected payoff date to 2030. So within 3 more years, we should, I'm jumping to 27 since we're about to budget for that, but really within 4 more years, this ad valorem tax should go away. General fund will have more money. Taxpayers will have more money in their pockets. So that is the ultimate goal, is to pay this off early. This is based on a financial model that our financial advisors have worked with us on. It's based on a certain percentage of growth, but from what is going on with our economic development, that easily could be bumped up, and you know, this could advance even more. So that's great news. So just for kicks, if we wanted to pay it off even earlier than 2030, this is the amount of new assessed value that would be required for us to bring into the TCSD district. Keeping in mind that these projects would have to be on the books and paying taxes. Not sure how likely that is, but if it were to happen, we currently have $2.8 billion in total assessed value. To pay it off in 2028, we would need double that. To pay it off in 2029, we would need $700 million of new value. Just as an FYI.
Carla?
Yes.
And that's new value, not increased assessment value.
It could be either.
All right.
Yep. Increased assessed value on the books to be taxed.
Is it fair to ask what percentage of assessment increases we've been seeing over the last 2 or 3 years in West Creek or in the TCSD?
Do you know within TCSD what the average is, Mary Ann? I know in general it was 11%, but that was not just within TCSD.
That's usually more. It can range between 10 to 15%.
10 to 15?
So it was a fair question.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
So Carla,
Yeah.
when we get one of these projects that's come in and we have, say we're gonna get $2 million in building permitting fees, how is that money allocated?
As far as who gets that money in their expense budget?
How is that, so we get $2 million last year that we weren't necessarily expecting.
Correct, yes.
How did that money get divvied up?
Well, the budget is already built when that money comes in, so that money goes directly into the general fund. And unless we needed to make a mid-year hire, which I don't think we did for Amazon, but ultimately it dumps back into our surplus, into our fund balance, and then we have that available for whatever needs we need in the future. So it doesn't come in and immediately, it's not given to building inspections or given to economic development or anything like that.
So my question is, and I'll let the gentleman, this impacts most, but, you know, for me, if the people that are living in those areas are gonna be impacted by those, then that money, I feel, should go potentially to the TCSD.
Right.
So if that's coming in, what would we need to do, assuming the board would agree, to say, hey, as these economic development projects come up, the first cut of that money goes towards paying the TCSD. How do we do that?
I think ultimately that would be a board decision. Like we would for any revenue that would come in, we would want to use that revenue wisely and deliberately, and so it would be part of the budget conversations. Board members, we expect X dollars to come in additional revenue from these sources, one of them economic development. Here's a possibility for how those new dollars could be used, but at the end of the day, that would be a budgetary decision made by the board.
Would it be a budgetary decision, or could we make it a policy
It could be a
decision?
policy decision. Could be.
There is one way that I've thought of, but I'm just throwing it out there, so please don't skewer me over it. But if we are believing in the TOD and believe it is the economic, a strong economic engine for the future for the county, and we utilized our AAA rating, knowing that the TOD is an ongoing engine that is producing funds to pay off such bonds, you would immediately turn TCSD debt into debt of all the citizens of the county. And that would allow us, now, that is a big ask. That's why I throw that out there as an idea, knowing, but that to me provides an equitable solution that leverages our strong financial position and allows every single district to say, we believe in what this overlay district can provide for the future of our revenue generation in the county. And what better thing than a bond issuance to go with that, because we're looking at the TOD as the next, I wouldn't be supportive of the TOD if it weren't forward-looking in every which way. We're looking at the next 25 to 50 years in this county, and how can we enhance our revenue generation capabilities. And that would also say too, to these residents, look, we're doing it. We know these, we're asking you to be on board for revenue generation we know is 3 to 5 to 10 years to come. But we've gotten this done. So that's just a way, but it does allow us to hone in on that, or really take advantage of that AAA rating we've got.
I would, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Go.
I like the idea that we're a county and not districts. And so with the revenues that are coming in, I'm all for getting rid of the TCSD bonds, and the quicker the better. But I would not want to do so at the expense of public safety, education, or transportation. And so if
Right, I was going to say the same thing.
if there's a need for us to do something that Station 8, I would not want to say, oh, Station 8, we're just going to have to delay that a little bit because we're going to take this revenue towards retiring the TCSD bonds, because the activity is happening in District 4, District 5. As Chief will explain, he's moving personnel all over the place for backup and co-supporting, and so it's a team effort, and I love the idea. I would not probably say no to it, except with a full understanding we would not be doing so at a detriment to districts 1, 2, 3. I would not want to see that.
What I'm looking at are those numbers of, once that's paid off, more money does come to the rest of the county.
Yes, sir. I understand.
So we could have
Okay.
fire stations.
Well, one thing to consider, and I'll ask Carla, Ms. Cape, to check my bond math, but $78 million issuance at roughly 3 to 3.5% on a 25-year term. Safe to say 5 to 6 million of servicing in a
Yep.
year?
Yes.
We're going to
It's
get there.
probably on the high end.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's what it is. It's, do we think we can generate comfortably 5 to 6 million in economic revenue to serve, additional economic revenue to service these bonds?
Well, I think,
And, go ahead.
I think these conversations are, this is exactly why we have to have this session, because as we start thinking about incentives for bringing folks here, I want to feel good about the number of incentives that we're offering, because it's a plan to get us someplace,
Yep.
not a plan to just get somebody here.
I don't want to be a dark cloud over all this sunshine, but the whole TCSD refinancing came about because there were some very ebullient and optimistic projections as to what growth was going to be. And my household budget is always good, better, best, and I operate on good, not better and best. Better and best are cherry and icing and all of those nice things, but I'm not sure what my appetite is for on the comes sort of financing. Once fooled, twice cautious, I guess. And
I think the good thing is we don't need to make those decisions today, but conceptually, this is a great opportunity to talk about, some of those concepts that may have mutual benefit to everybody, east, west, north, and south within our community, and how we can make really thoughtful, deliberate economic decisions that will have maximum benefit to every resident here in the community.
Dr. Lee, I've got something on this. I'm not, the math makes sense, Charlie. But are we gonna fund a well crew to go out and drill wells for everybody that's not in the TCSD? If we're moving all of the responsibility to the rest of the county? I mean,
Well,
that's-
I would use the term spreading it over the county as opposed
right,
to
I
moving
know,
it.
but it's
But,
just,
yeah.
it, like I said, it makes sense. It's just, I feel it would be insulting, to everybody that's not in the TCSD. I do like the idea of paying it off early, without a doubt, but I'd like to do it with the TOD and the technology zone. I'd like to do it that way, because they are, like, as Neil said, they are the ones more directly impacted. That's all I've got.
Yeah.
general
Thank you.
obligation bonds would require a referendum. wouldn't
It would, yes, sir.
Okay, so-
So let's transition and talk a little bit about debt, our current debt position, and it aligns nicely to the transition to the next topic. Carl?
Okay, so just for reminder's sake, we have a debt policy that we follow. Our target is to stay under 10% of the following year's budget annual expenditures of the general fund. Currently, we are only at 4.5%. We have $48 million.
Carla, you said following year, not subsequent?
Deadline.
Yeah.
Yes,
With
same thing.
following?
The
Okay,
following-
all right.
I think we made that change in our
We
policy to
did.
make it simpler.
I was having a brain burn.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Use the simpler version. And this chart right here will show all the blue that you see, that's the most recent GEO bonds that we just recently issued. We have 2 more years of paying off VPSA bonds and several more years of paying off private placement notes. And what are those? What are we currently paying for? The VPSA bonds we borrowed back in 2006, 1.6 million is still left to pay off. That was for construction and completion of middle school wing secondary complex. We pay that off very soon. In 2016, we borrowed debt for the 911 communication center and the equipment that went in that. That'll be paid off in 2031. And then the GEO bonds that we recently issued, that final maturity isn't until 2042. We borrowed 48.2 million, or I'm sorry, we have 48.2 million remaining to pay on that. That was to fund our fire station and the new recently completed Beechview Elementary School. So here, over the next 2 slides, we're gonna look at where are we now, what are we about to be at when we draw down the remaining referendum funds, and then how much more can we borrow? Which Charlie left the cat out of the bag, $78, $79 million more. So we're gonna take a look at all of that debt that we're allowed to remain within our debt policy. So we've said before, we have 48.7 million outstanding currently. We have 46 million that we still need to draw down, that we're authorized to draw down through the referendum. That needs to be done legally by January of 2029. So the amounts will go towards, hopefully, the CTE, the building of a CTE building, but it can go towards any school projects, 18.2 million. And then 27.8 million will be drawing down to go towards our courthouse. So below on this graph, you'll see the blue is what's existing. And then once we borrow the referendum project money, that will bump our payoff out to 2047. It'll increase our annual debt payment by almost $3 million. It'll bump it up to $7.6 million that we're paying every year out of our general fund towards debt service. That's principal and interest. So in total, we would have $94.7 million outstanding. Beyond that, to stay within our policy, so let me restate, 10% is our target. We do have a clause written in there that we have a ceiling of 12% that we will allow ourselves to go up to. It's not the goal, we want to stay at 10. But if we were to borrow our max amount and stay under that ceiling, we could borrow up to $79 million in addition to the referendum. That would give us a total borrowing of $173.7 million. And then at that point, we'd max out our policy. And our annual debt service would go up to $13.5 million. And we're at about 5 right now, so your math was spot on. So that's a number to keep in mind if we want to borrow for any large projects going forward.
So Carla, you're giving us potentials, you're not saying, recommending we go there.
Correct.
Max out on everything.
Just
Correct,
what is-
Make that
definitely. If
clear.
you wanted to get very crazy, you could get
That would,
$79 million out and
That
still
would
be
be
fine.
walking on thin ice,
Right.
mortgage our future to that extent.
Correct. Because we'd still have to come up with the annual money, you still have to pay it off
Not a
every year.
conservative approach, in other
Right.
words.
Just a scenario.
To Mr. Winfrey's point, we've already put the policy in place to make sure that cap is sound, and those caps are in better than comparable counties around us. So, and by better than, if low is good, then lower, if high is good, then higher, on all those fronts, so.
Yeah. And I believe this is my last slide on this topic, but I wanted to take a look at interest rates. When we last borrowed our GEO bonds in 2022, interest rates were great. They were under 2%. That's all the way to the left. Currently, all the way to the right, as of June, they are at 4.13%. I know everyone likes to wait until interest rates are lower, which makes the interest that we pay lower, obviously. But I did want to point out that when we borrowed for the elementary school and the fire station, we reinvested them in a SNAP account. So a higher interest rate, while it does mean we're paying higher interest, we're also earning higher interest in that SNAP account. So it all balances out.
Carla, just for the listening audience at home,
Yes.
acronyms and such. So
Yes,
we-
SNAP.
We've borrowed money, but it's not just sitting someplace in a no interest environment.
Correct. Yes, we borrow it, doesn't go into our Wells Fargo with all of the rest of our tax money and all of that. It stays in a separate bank account called a state non-arbitrage program. And it's very common. Lots of local governments do this. It earns great interest. And we
Tell me
draw
what
it down
grade-
as
tell
we
me what
spend
grade
it.
is.
What is the percent? Over 5%?
I don't know, but you gotta be careful there because if the bond rate is high and the interest rate environment tanks,
Yeah.
Right.
then we're not in the position we are today.
Exactly.
So you gotta have some forethought on that as well. But
Yeah,
I don't
it's not
know
a
the
set
exact
earning rate
number
on
out
this
of my
one.
mind.
So Carl, do you know, so we're paying, how much interest are we paying per year versus how much we are getting in interest?
So we borrowed at 2%, so we're paying, that's a set amount, less 2% right now. And we're earning
A
5%.
little over 5, yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, we're doing great. But that's because 5%
Which
is
put us
high
in an
right now.
arbitrage position.
Now, what Pam is
Yeah.
saying, if we borrowed at 4 and then, you know, we're paying interest on that, and then we put it in SNAP and then the interest rate tanks, then we're only earning 2%. So
So you gotta
it's a
consider
gamble.
both.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I was just, the reason I was bringing it up because we signed those papers in 2021. So we borrowed all that money and it's just sitting there. So one of the conversations we need to have is, it's great if we give you all this money, when can we get these projects going?
Right.
So it's.
Right. Which Regional Elementary rolled quick, and that's
Did.
all done, that's all drawn down, so that's good. We still need to draw down the funds for the fire station.
Correct.
Project management is a factor for us to consider. It's staff capacity, you know, do we contract any sort of project management, like all of that, like we have to, in addition to the finances of this, we need to plan the projects in the right order where it is manageable and we can deliver them with quality experience for our residents. So board members, before we transition out of the financial discussion, anything else that you wanted to talk about before we dive into current and future projects for consideration?
Still CIP,
Still CIP, yes, sir.
so we're not gonna go into that assessed values and tax.
No,
rates.
no, we're going to focus on capital.
I just wanted to say something. Being a new supervisor and, you know, learning about this, I shudder to think if we had not done the TTSV infrastructure when we did, and let's say we had to do something like that today, in today's dollars and today's interest rates, it would be such a burden on this county that it would be overwhelming, and it would not leave room for support of our fire and rescue and our public safety, our sheriffs and schools, so forth and so on. Although the ad valorem tax is a negative for the eastern part of the county citizens, there is a benefit derived from that I think it should not be overlooked.
So let's dive in a little bit and talk about our current projects right now. When you adopted the budget in April, you approved nearly $6 million in capital projects for fire and rescue, schools, IT, and emergency technology services. And so this slide shows the distribution of those projects. And you also approved nearly $6 million in utilities projects as a part of your current FY 2026 budget. And so these next few slides share where we are in those projects, and really just wanted to provide a high-level summary of the dollar amounts associated with those projects as well as the current status. And you can see here on fire and rescue that the ambulance and the brush truck have been ordered, and with the fire engine, we're looking at developing specifications and working to identify a stock unit, which is a strategy being used to reduce costs as well as delivery times being reduced over time. You can see even with that approach, we're still looking at a long lead time on that unit, as well as some work that's happening at our fire and training center.
Dr.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, before you get too far into this, because what I don't see in the future is, I'd like to have a conversation about Station 8, a follow through to what you and I had. So I think I see on one of these that 11,700,000 is currently earmarked towards Station 8. And when that was told to me, I about fell out of my seat. I think a few expletives flew, because that is nowhere near the amount of money that I was anticipating for Station 7 or Station 8. But when it got rolled in, we had already had money set aside for Station 8. This money got added onto it. I don't believe we should be anywhere near an $11 million station in Station 8. So I feel like we need to have that conversation before we start talking about future upcoming projects. If we do decide it's going to be a $12 million fire station, that, you know, the number one question I got is like, it's beautiful, but how many people are you bringing here? And that's literally everybody on Facebook said, how much are you growing District 2 to support that? So I want to have that conversation, because in my mind, there's still $4 million, $3.5 to $4 million that's already set aside for Station 7.
Yeah, I think, you know, one of the major things that we want to work through is the procurement process for Station 8, Station 7, some of our major projects. And so just for the benefit of the audience, we're currently going through the design phase on Station 8. We're approximately 70% complete on that design. And so once we go out to bid for that, then ultimately we'll know what the prevailing market value is on that. There is a budget that was built over time with money from the general obligation bond, as well as some other decisions that have been made in the past. The current allocation right now is, as Mr. Spoonhour said, nearly $12 million.
For one
So-
station.
But that's
For one
never been
station.
the allocation, is what my point is. Like, so, this should be a non-starter. Like, if we have to pause, because that's 50% more than we ever anticipated.
Can we bring in Chief Ferguson?
Sure, be glad.
What is a station that Chesterfield or Henrico of comparable size, do we have any numbers on what they spent on that?
So, like Mr. Spoonhour said, we certainly hope it'll come in for much less, but right now, all we have to go by is what the other jurisdictions are spending, as well as a cost estimator that's being provided by the A&E firm. So hopefully, we can get that out to bid, pretty soon. Looking around the region, it's kind of hard to look at the public-facing information to understand if we're comparing apples to apples, and you look at that because you don't know what's built into the numbers that you see on websites and things like that. You don't know if it includes, most jurisdictions would include the cost of a fire engine in that, or an ambulance, or we don't know if it includes site preparations or roadway improvements or traffic signalization. You just don't know all of that information. But looking across the region from UKent to Henrico to Chesterfield to Hanover, you can find a range of anywhere from $7 to $14 million. Now, I will tell you that our fire station design for Fire Station 8 is matching up to what's in the 2035 comprehensive plan. It's a three drive-through bay apparatus type station. Obviously, it's 24 hours. And one thing that you have to understand also is that our industry has changed. We were already on a course to change prior to the pandemic because of diversity and things of that sort within the fire service, and I'm going to the individual bunk rooms. And then the pandemic came along, and we had firefighters co-sleeping in different beds, but in multiple in one room. And then you had everybody went home, fire stations were shut down. That was not just here, it was all across the entire region. So when you start to add in the cost of individual bunk rooms, then therefore, your square footage goes up. What we're looking at for Fire Station 8 is just under 16,000 square feet. Fire Station 6 in Haydensville was opened new in 2017, and that's like 12,004 something. It's close to 12,500. But the difference is Haydensville, we have dormitory type rooms to sleep in. We don't have individual station bunk rooms. So I'm hoping, Mr. Spoonhour, what HBA has given us on a cost estimator, and we have no way of knowing if this is going to be right or not. It's looking like about $520 a square foot, potentially, approximately, and that could add up to be 8.1, 8.2 million. That being said, Hanover just opened a station in Laurel Meadows in Mechanicsville, so we can look at it. We're trying to design a building that's withstand the elements of time. 75-year building. 50-year building has been mentioned, but this is your infrastructure. This is your county infrastructure, like schools are, like youth water facilities, and so forth. And looking at the history of the fire rescue department, 4 of our volunteer-owned fire stations were built in the 50s and early 60s, with Company 5 being built new in 1983. So, when you think about a 75-year building, it seems like a long time, but then you look what you've got, what you're using today, with the renovations and additions, and you already have that. So we're hoping it'll come in less than that. Henrico County is obviously, this was surprising to me, but Henrico County's model is a 4-bay station because they built for the future. They look at that and they understand that they have reserve apparatus and things that are sitting outside. We wanted to stay with a 3-bay design and be as conservative as we possibly can. But you can find what you're looking for if you look around.
So my point isn't so much this piece of it. My point is, every year I sat on this board expecting a $7 to $8 million fire station. Now with the stroke of a pen, somebody that's not sitting on this board says we're building a $12 million fire station, and that's a problem to me. And it should be a problem to all of us. So
I'm going to, I had, not by choice, to go through the car buying process here recently. And I had a budget. And guess what? This new car does not have, they have where you get air conditioning in the seats now. I mean, seat heaters I've known about, but the air conditioning in the seats is like, who thought of that? I mean, and so I would submit, we had a budget, that's what we built to.
In other words,
I will,
what can you build us for $7 million?
Thank you
Well,
very
we
much.
I learned that from Mr. Rayleigh, Dr. Rayleigh from the schools. We said one of the lessons learned was going out and saying, we want to build this, what's it gonna cost, versus we have this much money, like we were doing with the courthouse. And saying, hey, this is what the amount of money you have, what can you build us from that? And then we add on from there as we see fit or our needs, but I'm just flustered that we were saying, you know, that without a conversation, it just jumped up like that, and 2 fire stations lumped into one, and we're okay with that.
So,
well,
I'm not okay.
the biggest piece of that is we do not control inflation at the local level. The second piece is we have got to commit to providing better services
I
than
don't
our neighboring.
disagree.
So but if I can tell you a $7 million fire station is not up to par with what all our neighboring counties are providing, that is penny wise, pound foolish. And I think we should be taking a 50-year view and saying, and this is the biggest thing, goes back to human capital. What is going to attract that fire and rescue personnel to want to spend the night in this station, to make it a second home, to enjoy going to every single day so that they can do their job the absolute best? I really wince at the thought of penny pinching on the initial budgets of these projects. I think the scrutiny of it is.
I'm not saying that at all.
Okay.
I'm not saying that we shouldn't be building the best. I'm saying that it's a deliberate conversation when something goes up 50% and shows up in a budget that I've never seen before, and it's the fire station I've been fighting for since before I got on the board. Like, I should know this. And I'm not, I'm like, hey, you want to give me $12 million for a fire station? Yahoo.
I would additionally say to your residents who are saying, why are you potentially overbuilding? I would say fire and rescue is a complex network used to serve all of the citizens of Goochland County. So honestly, as a resident of District 4, I would say, I want that station to be built to the exact same standards that we're gonna build the next one on the eastern end, because if they're faster, more efficient, getting to something in the west, they're not gonna call the stations in the middle of the county to draw resources as much. So that network is improved, and that's.
I'm not saying we're not building the exact same station, the exact right station. I think my point
I
is
think,
being missed.
I think what Neil is pointing out is that there's a discrepancy of what was budgeted and what your board voted on versus what is potential. And I think what he's saying is he feels that inflationary cost should come before the board again.
Well, at the end of the day, ultimately, anything will go in front of the board. And so just so we're all on the same page, when the bond allocation was provided for initially Station 7, it was $8.2 million.
Absolutely.
There was an accounting that we have from staff dating back to 2018, 2019, where there were funds from this project transferred to that project, and startup dollars for this that were transferred to that. And so there are multiple entries dating back to 2019 fiscal year that have been put in a pot for a future fire station. And so at the end of the day, the board will decide how much the board wants to pay on any sort of fire station. So there's currently $12 million sitting in a pot for Station 8. Now, whether we choose to spend 8.2 or whatever that number is, that's just a placeholder for where those dollars are allocated. But at the end of the day, the board will be the ones who authorize to move forward on any sort of contract.
I appreciate my earlier comments. If we give government money, we will spend it.
These are dollars that could be used not only for this, but for any other project.
Well, how about Station 7?
Dr. Rayleigh, if I may, just try to wrap this up, and I'll sit down now.
No, you're good, man. Get right up here.
So some other news that probably isn't what you want to hear, but I'm going to always be factual and truthful with you, is my colleagues, my peer fire chiefs are telling me that capital projects are coming in 25% over what you planned for. Schools is a great example of that, with the way things worked out with Goochland Elementary. You know, nobody wants that to happen, but that's what you can expect. The other thing I will say is there's been quite a bit of turnover within our county government. We've been very constant with fire rescue, and we have worked by the same guardrails and the same parameters from day one on these fire stations, and we follow what's in the 2035 comprehensive plan. It's my job as the fire chief to tell you what I think the fire rescue department needs to serve the citizens of the county. And certainly budget matters, but I'm here to tell you that while it may appear, and certainly I've heard what you've said, that is not the guidance that I've had, and it's not the track that I've taken. We have continued to stay focused on what's being portrayed in the 2035 comprehensive plan, which has a very good section on fire stations and design, as well as looking at industry standards and the way things have changed since we started talking about this. So we'll do our best. We'll do whatever you want us to do. We'll answer your questions as honestly as we can.
Thank you.
Thank you
I'd
very
like
much.
to-
Can I ask you a question, Chief?
Absolutely, sure.
To what extent are you overbuilding for the future? And I realize it goes against what I just said a minute ago, that, you know, paying with current dollars is certainly cheaper than paying for future dollars, paying something with future dollars with inflation and everything. But do you, I mean, have you got an extra bay there that you think we're gonna need in the next 10 years? Or you feel like that's, how did you bake into those, what you're building?
So the three drive-through apparatus bay is a very standard design. Again, it goes back in time. We're looking ahead. This is what we need to do. Honestly, sir, we have apparatus that sits outside today that could certainly be put on the roof if we had the space for it. Some of it stays at the training center around the county. And also, one thing that we're missing in our organization is a reserve fleet. We've seen a 54% increase in call volume in 5 years and a 56% increase in ambulance transport. So we have to build a reserve fleet to be able to have units in service when other units are out of service with mechanical and that type of thing.
Chief,
So I don't think we're overbuilding.
Chief, when you and I talked about this, I feel like you had mentioned something before. 2 bays versus 3 bays, the cost is nominal.
That's
yeah.
true.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Spinell.
Yeah.
It's a valid point.
Yeah, you're building base space, and that concrete isn't cheap, but it's less expensive when you start looking at living area of the fire station. So, thank you all for your support for fire rescue. I know there'll be some other questions, maybe. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thanks for all you
No,
do.
these are critical decisions for our community, so it's important that
Can we get, I mean, Station 8 needs to get designed, needs to get the final budget approved, and needs to get started.
Right.
Can we say that our focus is to do that and take those learnings before we apply them to the next station? What I don't want is concurrent to lead us to be not precise and not focused.
I think I want to get there. That's one of the things I want to lead to in the conversation, but just for the benefit of everybody, we're optimistic that we can go out to bid by November 1st on Station 8. So we had a meeting today with the architects and the site engineers, and you know, we're moving along. There's some things that still have to happen, but we're hopeful to get that out in the market November 1st, and we'll know more what the costs are hopefully by the end of the calendar year. So moving along a little bit, board members.
Can I jump into something?
Please, go ahead,
Sorry.
Rob.
I wanted to add, because Mr. Spoonhour, when you said it jumped up 150% or 50% without any board knowledge, I just wanted to emphasize, it did start with 8.2 million, that was the bond amount. But two amounts that jump immediately into my head that were, I mean, everything that was added to it was a board decision. So you have seen it, you might just not recall it, but there was even 1 million specifically for Station 8 when it was going to be that temporary bay
Correct.
apparatus. So there's 1 million that went on top of the bond. And then the year that we were learning, I guess it was fiscal year 2024, I believe, that we were learning how much more expensive just the school alone was. I know we put close to $1 million of local funds. That was with the original adopted budget, which we did have a CIP work session on where we discussed, we're gonna put this towards Station 7 in case something like this happens with that. So that's $2 million just off the top of my head that I know were discussed in great detail. That would bring us up to 10.2 million.
But
So
my
it's-
understand, again, that's
Right.
probably flawed, and we haven't had this depth of a meeting in a
Right.
long time.
Correct.
My understanding was that that million was coming out of, so it was additional, we appropriated it, try to
Yeah.
use your words, but that 8.2, then they go down to 7.2.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
this was
not
just
that we
local
kept
funding in
increasing,
addition.
that was not, I did not understand it as we were continuing. Now, again, to Mr. Butter's point, I understand things are gonna cost more. I understand this was not gonna be an
Right.
$8.2 billion station. I didn't think it was gonna be a $13 million or $12 million
Right.
station.
I didn't want to imply, I just wanted to be known that none of this was, oh, we'll just secretly move money here to get us to a
No.
$13 million station. That was,
No,
this all did
fair
go
enough.
in front of the board, and this is more for like public knowledge too. But we have gotten there, but like everyone has said, that doesn't mean we have to spend this amount. It's just there if we need it, obviously.
Together, we all have the opportunity to move forward from here, chart a path forward, and decide what we want with these decisions and future decisions, and we'll certainly do all that together as a team moving forward. Moving,
Well, before you do, I am interested in what we've got there is budgeted amounts. And my earlier comment, it's got a shelf life of 5 years or more, and are we really capital improving $123,000 versus operationally spending it?
I think that's a great philosophical decision as we go forward in building future budgets. These decisions have been made, but as we build the FY27 and beyond, I certainly think that's something for us to think about as we're making recommendations to you for your consideration. But to your point, maybe that's not a capital expense, maybe that is something we build in operations or we pay for otherwise. I do want to highlight the work of our team who identified a way to accomplish a goal with our AED replacements and using current resources and saving the county ultimately $500,000 that we can then free up for other long-term capital needs. So huge kudos to the team for thinking critically, challenging the status quo, and thinking how we can maybe do something differently and save some dollars. Schools project is on track. They did have a pretty significant lead time. That's in design stage with their engineering firm. That was a significant decision made. These other projects are at different levels of being ordered and being completed, but just wanted you to know, board members, that this work is happening, it's taking place. Staff is on top of all of these projects and moving them forward with deliberate speed so we can accomplish these goals. And so you can certainly see where we are on the status of those projects now, including these projects for our emergency operations that are currently being considered and purchase orders being issued, and you can see estimated completion times there for those projects, as well as some general services projects, including a generator, which we're looking at mid-November potentially for installation upon arrival, and then some significant projects taking place with utilities. And as you know, board members, we're in the midst of transition right now with our utilities team. So when our new director of public utilities starts on Monday, these are some things that we will transition to her and support her as she's working through that project. But some things have started, although maybe not as in depth as some of the other projects that we referenced. There is some work happening behind the scenes to prepare for these projects when she comes on site starting on Monday.
Just clarification, this is utility
Yeah.
funds, not general.
These are utility funds, so what you see on this slide, Mr. Lyle, is the utilities budget. That's correct. Yep.
How is that, I guess what we have to say, working budget, or how much R&R money is in utilities? I mean, if, going back a slide, we're tapping in, what, 4 million, 3 million, 700,000. I mean, is that depleting that fund?
No, so the utilities actually has 4 different funds. They've got their operating fund, they've got their CIP fund, which this will fund, which is connection fees that funds all this. And then we've got our TCSD fund on its own with just debt as the only expense. And then we've got our R&R fund, which was basically for the recent pump station. And combined, so on the audit, they are all combined and they have a healthy fund balance, but even within each individual fund, yeah, this is all, they have a fund balance that rolls forward year to year, and this will be in good shape.
I do want to bring the board's attention to the top quadrant there, the Ridgefield Water Booster Station and Storage Tank. And so that's going to be a significant expenditure that is not going to be paid for simply with the TAP fees and the ongoing operations fees. That's going to be a significant investment that we need to talk to probably outside of this setting just as a matter of time, and that ties to economic development on the east end, meeting the needs of our residents on the east end. So that's a significant decision that we probably need a lot more time to talk about. But I wanted to bring that to your awareness that may not have gotten a whole lot of attention in the past.
That's not for me.
Not me either.
There are 3 items I'd just like to point out in that ambulance expected completion 24 months, fire engine 24 to 36 months, chiller 36 38 week lead time. We've approved the CIP budget. Are those orders being made well in advance? Are they aligning with when these are coming into the budget? I hope, we do have supply chain issues globally, and I hope that we're not finding ourselves in a unprepared situation for those where something that's in our CIP budget gets pushed just because we didn't make the order in time. I think if we voted on the CIP budget, that is a stamp of approval. Get that order in if it's necessary so that we are not burdened by the supply chain issues in this country. And so I think, I just want to make sure that's happening. Those are both fire and rescue related. So, Mr. Ferguson,
Please.
Yes, sir. We are ordering as soon as we can. We did place the order for the ambulance last week. Chief Gordon, the brush truck is being ordered this week, right? Ford pickup truck converted to a brush truck. The fire engine, we're having difficulty identifying a stock unit in line, so we're going down another path to figure out if there's a less custom apparatus that can come in under the funding that we have to work with. Just had a conversation with Chief Jones about that prior to coming over. So we are, it just so happens that we have 2 fire engines on order. I believe one was ordered in July of 2022. We ordered another one last year. And this one we're trying to buy now, so there'll be 3 fire engines on order. Some of the delivery times are starting to reel in a little bit, but it's possible that several of these fire trucks could show up relatively close together like we saw the last delivery.
if we can use the 2022 engine order as an example, though, that was in which year's budget do you think that was in?
Well, it would have been that year.
So we didn't make the order until
2023 or 2022. 2022. Great.
Right.
So
Yeah,
our budget is not matching the needs
Correct.
with the time, delivery time, I
Right.
guess.
Right.
When do we pay for these things? Do we pay at
So-
order or on
So what we
Yeah.
typically
Well, let's
do
put
is
deposits on
we
one.
like to do a large prepaid. We get a large discount, a large prepaid discount by paying, we don't pay the full amount, but typically that helps us stay under budget. We get that commitment of payment in as soon as we can.
We can't do that till the new fiscal year rolls around.
That is right.
Right.
Budget may be approved in April and we start working on it, but the money isn't available until July 1st.
Right.
If you guys recall, board members, that you did allow us to do a stock unit that was purchased early, that was delivered in the year it would have been, which is this year. And that's worked out very well. That tanker has been in service since the first of the year, and we're using it every day.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great questions. All right, let's talk a little bit about some high-profile projects that currently require some future funding decisions, and we certainly are not expecting any decisions today, but just wanted to share for transparency that where we are and some decisions that will need to be made in the future. Those 3 major projects are the new courthouse, which we talked a little bit about earlier, old Goochland Elementary School, as well as Fire Station 7. And so, as Carlos said, we currently have $27.8 million in general obligation bonds available to us. Residents have already voted on that. It's just a matter of going out to the market and receiving those dollars, and so that is specifically for the courthouse, 27.8 at this point in time. So any sort of future funding for both the new courthouse, 7, or GES could come from a future bond obligation, a general obligation bond through a referendum, Virginia Resources Authority, directly through a financial institution, or by paying cash or proffers. So there are some options available to us. to meet the needs of these projects. That's ultimately a future decision based on how the county wants to approach that. And so let's talk about the new courthouse, because we do have those dollars available at this point in time. We have the first iteration. It's very early in draft phase from the architects and the consultants who have been working on the needs assessment and the space study for the courthouse. And so I had a call with them, with staff earlier today, just to better understand that very early draft. And I asked many, many questions to get a better understanding and push back on things already that I wanted greater understanding of. And so ultimately, we're going to continue to work as staff with our constitutional officers to work through those processes in the next several weeks. And my goal, board members, is to have the architect and the consultant be here in October to give you a presentation on that needs assessment and the work that has been done over the last several years, and specifically the last several months on that, so that you have an understanding of the work that's been done. You have a chance to hear directly from them. So pending that presentation in October, our goal as staff is to come back to you in November to talk about additional procurement options and looking differently potentially at how we may want to procure the future courthouse. There are many options available, some traditional, some not traditional. All of them have their pros and cons and different nuances, but we have been working with an expert in this field who is available to help us understand this greater and present this to the public and for your consumption as well. And so potentially, pending the receipt and final review of that space study and a conversation about procurement, potentially we could move forward with authorizing staff to move forward with going forward with the procurement process, whether that's architecture and engineering, or that the process that brings the contractor and the architects together on the front end. That's called design build. So many pros and cons associated with this. Funding decisions don't need to be made now or even in December. Those funding decisions can be made later, but ultimately trying to move this project forward with getting information to you and to the public, both on needs as well as procurement, so that potentially we could have this out on the market by the end of the calendar year.
Can I reiterate something, just to make sure we're clear to everybody? The 27.8 million is not money sitting around in surplus. It is additional borrowings for which we will begin paying interest on immediately and adding to our debt
Correct.
when we take that down. So everybody needs to be clear in their thinking on that.
I'd love, we've got a couple of the constitutional officers that sit back, so I'd love to hear from y'all on how it's going. Just what concerns do you have as we move into this?
Like, my concern.
Or praises, I meant praises.
My concern is, is one, the financial. We've toured several different courthouses. I was talking with Sheriff Giles from King George. We're actually going up to see his courthouse. We've seen it once, but it was not operational. Now it is operational, and he's like, you got to come back up here because there's a lot of things that we should not have done. So we're going to be touring that. I think it's the 19th of September. I know Dr. Rayleigh is going with us to that, and I know Scott and a few others. But I can tell you the courthouses that we've gone to, and some of them the same size that we probably would need here, and with the safety and security of it, because we want it to be as secure as can be, that's way too low. It's going to be much.
Do you have a ballpark?
Yeah.
I actually just sent him an email while I was here on what his courthouse costs, but I would say probably about 40 minutes.
Yeah, I think the needs will drive the square footage, and the square footage will drive the cost. So one of the things I asked the team to do today is, let's look at this square footage need right now and see truly where that needs to land, and then we can go from there. But I love the perspective of Mr. Lumpkins or anyone else.
I'm going to go on that tour too. I've done several of the tours, and yeah, the sense is the 27.8 doesn't need it. But again, going back to what are the needs, we've had good discussions with the folks at courthouse, the people that are working with the potential architect. That was a real good discussion, and we've had a couple of sit downs. I had one like 2 weeks ago, and really peeling away. And I feel good that we're in the process of, as effectively as I can figure out, you talked about population's gonna be 40,000, you hope it doesn't get to that. But those are numbers that have been discussed. You know, they've talked about the Weldon Cooper data, and I've questioned it. I'll just tell you, and along with what the sheriff just said, that, you know, you look at it like, oh, every one of them we've gone to, like, oh, we'd like to have done this a little differently and the like. But the story that I've heard several times is, I mean, it happened in Hanover, I think it's up in Loudoun County, these places. They build it, within 2 or 3 years, they're having to find other space in the community to put different groups. So I know when we talk about keeping the courthouse a long time, we don't want that to happen. Then the question is, and that's a question I ask these folks, how do you build something for the next 50 years? And I don't get a real clear answer. But we do have some data, and obviously they say, like in Hanover, they just built another floor on top of the building. Like, if you give them money, they'll spend it. I think if you give them space, they'll use it. So in a matter of a couple of years, they build, you know, they say, let's go ahead and finish up that upper floor and start using it. So, you know, I didn't, at the beginning necessarily, wasn't sure about the process, but the more recent meetings I felt they've been serious in asking good questions and taking our input.
Feel pretty good about the folks who are doing the work. And one of the things I asked them to do is, could we build something in phases potentially? You know, just looking at short-term versus long-term. The scope of the work, just so we are set on the same standard as a 40-year plan. So this building most likely would be around for longer than 40 years, but that's how they're forecasting population needs of the court and judicial system for the next 40 years.
One thing I would stress is we have a entry point to our county courthouse at this spot where this courthouse building is. I think we really do have to place a value on common meeting space, areas that we can show off our county to others who come here for any number of reasons, so that we put the best foot forward. And what I do think is, we have a courthouse village plan. If you talk about how do you get the courthouse village plan to build out, you start at the ends, and or vice versa. You start in the middle and you work out. But I really do think the benefits to the right construction on that site will be significant going throughout this whole area if it's done right. And it's a good problem to have. We have a 200-year-old building to replace. Let's honor that 200-year-old building with the architecture that we choose, with the builders that we choose, and the craftsmen. I hate to say it, those come with additional funds, significant funds on the front end, but nothing pains me more than seeing new courthouses that look like that blob they put in Soldier Field. You know, like a beautiful historical structure, all architecture and history be damned. Let's just build what we have to. And that's not, I don't think that's the representation of Goochland we want to have. And that comes with a price, but I think it's huge value.
Carl, didn't we originally budget for more than the 27.8 million for the new courthouse? Is this
think
right
so.
on the amount we budgeted?
Yeah, this is it.
And that's what the amount that's left over?
Well, if
I
we
thought
put it
maybe we
in
had
fiscal year
used some of
27.
that money for something else.
So we haven't gotten there yet. It's always been just this base amount in 27, so we can always add to it when we come up on this budget process.
Okay.
I think the funding decision, we will need to really roll our sleeves up on. Once we determine, number one, what we want to put out to bid, we get the bids back, you know, how do we want to fund that is going to be an absolutely critical decision. But board members, do you have any concerns about this potential trajectory of?
The sheriff has got something I think he wants
I
to
just,
share.
one quick thing for board members, if you are available on September 19th, you can grab with us. You can come
In the
up with
front
us.
or the back?
But the King George Courthouse Board is on the 19th, at 10 a.m. I'll go through the 10.
There's a limit on how many can go.
Right, I know it's,
Understood.
yes.
So, Mr. Chairman, ma'am, I'll weigh in. A couple of things. Thank you, Charlie, for what you said. I've been to a couple of these courthouses, and a couple of them have left me this impression. You walk in, and it looks like they're really trying to do something nice. You know, you walk in at first, and then you look to the left or the right, and I won't name the county, but one of them, oh, I see there's some kind of theme they're trying to do, and then you look to the left, right, and you look to the left, and you see industrial stairwells. I mean, it just is so out of place. So, but that's a decision that you guys will make on behalf of the county, but I appreciate your sentiment, because this is the village area that we've always said, the comprehensive plan goes way back, this is a growth area. Goochland is a wealthy county. You're asking, and I'm now drawing some of my experience, I mean, when people are moving into, and we proved those, I'm pointing that way towards Reed Marsh and all that, people are coming into this community paying that kind of money for these homes. I think it comes with an expectation that we're not gonna put a gray concrete building with tiny windows in it, just save money. So, so we talked about that. I've talked to architects. They talk about Jeffersonian look, the serpentine walls and all that sort of stuff. So we don't want to just like start out and then, like I said, you log in, oh, this is beautiful, and you look to the left or right, and you see like, oh, they ran out of money, or they tried to cut corners. But those are not easy decisions. And Tom, to your point about that being all the money, I will say this is from my time on the board. In hindsight about the bond referendum, there was so much going on, so much focus, but we did not do a good job on really planning what these things are going to really cost. We missed the mark, and I was on the board, and it wasn't. I don't think it was any malice or anything. It's just like there's a lot going on. We hadn't done a bond issuance. There's a lot of talk about getting this done, the whole process of bond, and it was almost like third in line of priorities was let's figure out what these things are going to cost, and we can really tell with the school. So that number coming in when we had that was one of my last votes, was to bite the bullet and come up with some more money for the school. But my view is we, the prior board, missed the mark by not really digging more, but it takes time. As we see, it's taking time. It takes time to dig in. So we had a limited amount of time. But Jeremy will remember, we looked at it and we're like, we missed we need to get water and sewer there. And so there was $1 million. Of course, I'm sitting there like, what the hell?
So in other words, we gotta fix it now, right?
No, and then it's, so I would just say if we're stuck at that number, I just remember the history of that number. It is what it is, but that doesn't really reflect a reality. And we quickly figured it out 6 months into it. We're like, should we have spent, more digging on that number? So that's just a reality. We have inflation, but just sharing the process and the time constraints we had with a lot going on, I think. And that's part of what landed us here.
I have some positive news to add to that. Mr. Winfrey, you just asked, is that all we have? And I had forgotten about this, but this 25-year plan shows any major funding we've given towards these projects, and there is $3.5 million of local money that I guess we had some forethought to put toward over the years.
Yes.
And I also wanted to add, like Mr. Lumpkins was saying, to get ready to ask for how much we were going to borrow. These were probably estimates in 2019.
They were.
So this
Yeah.
is 6 years later
Sure.
costs, and it will be 5 years from now. So
So
That's
Charlie,
nice.
I agree with your philosophy.
No.
And I think, we ought to plan for things like indoor plumbing and.
No, let's not go crazy, Tom.
So more to come on that, board members. Next step is finalizing this space study, and our goal as staff is to present that to you in October so that we can continue on a trajectory and move some things forward. Talk a little bit about fire stations, and so as we discussed, money that was previously allocated for Station 7 is now in that pot for Station 8. And so on paper and realistically, there are no dollars currently assigned to Station 7. And so I think one of the things for us to think about is, do we want to move forward with putting something out on the market for A&E services for this station? Granted, no funding decisions need to be made, but do we want to move this work forward and put something out on the public market to get bids to determine how we can move forward with architecture and engineering services? We're not looking at going out to bid for construction. We still don't know the budget on this, but do we want to start to design Station 7?
Station 8 or 7?
Seven.
Station 7.
Oh, okay.
But can I ask Chief a question? Is there any benefit in getting a twofer? you know, putting two of them out at
I
once.
think Dr.
Yeah, I
Ray
can,
answer
I can
that.
speak to that, Mr. Winfrey. And so the Virginia Public Procurement Act does expect competition, and we have been asked that question many times because one would assume that that would be a good way to do that, but the General Assembly in its infinite wisdom has not allowed us to do that because of the Virginia Public Procurement Act, and so we do have to have competition. We do need to put the procurement of this out on the public market so that we can make sure ultimately we get competition and better pricing. So we do need to put it out.
So just to answer your question, because I know we're running short on time, I have no problem moving forward with the caveat that we are able to take the learnings from 8 and apply them.
Yeah.
You know, so there may not be parallel path, but staggered path should be at least some. So I think we need to get this going.
So you're saying it's outside the scope of the General Assembly for us to consider this as one project where we are putting them out competitively and giving everybody an opportunity to bid on 2 instead of 1?
The
You gotta
archi-
be individual?
The architecture
That doesn't make any sense.
part of this has to be done bid separately. We may conceivably put the construction out to bid together, but I don't think that's going to line up as far as timing goes.
Well, maybe it's a bad idea anyway.
Yeah.
Tom, I don't know what your
I had
experience
10
were at Village Bank, but back last century, when I worked at Southern Bank, we had a template for every banking center, and it was the same. Every blessed banking center was the same. Now, I'm seeing this, and it says that 8 is currently under construction. What
Under
would pre-
design.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
What would preclude us from using this design
Yeah.
for 7?
So the way the RFP currently is written is that we would, that design currently is proprietary, and so we have written the RFP in a way that says, that essentially describes that without saying, design it just like this, 3 bays with this construction of X amount of living quarters and place to work out. Like, we have built that into the scope of what we would want folks to design without exactly saying that we want that. And that's a way that we feel that we can be in alignment with the Procurement Act and still accomplish the objectives of what we had talked about for efficiencies.
Dr. Ray, if I may, we have saved staff hours. When you look at the amount of time that's been invested already in Station 8, whatever the A&E firm that moves forward with Station 7, there's a tremendous savings in staff hours and things that we've been able to vet. And we're basically designing industry standard stations. Don't have anything in the station that's unusual but I will tell you that one other big difference between the project at 7 and 8 is building mechanics. When you look at Station 8 in Sandy Hook is operating off of a well system and an elaborate septic field versus the West Creek station will be on county water, county sewer. And so that's a pretty substantial, floor plan could be similar, exterior could be, or it could be different based on architecture in different areas of the county. But when you look at the building mechanics, that's a pretty substantial difference.
Good point.
Dr. Rayleigh mentioned, somebody mentioned about the sewer line. And, yeah, there's money for 7 that we don't spend at 8, but we drill a well at 7 that we won't drill at, I'm sorry, at 8 that we won't drill at 7, so. Thanks.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know, prolonged, but is this gonna do it for us for a while? Station 7, once completed, you have in your mind long range?
We have 2.
So, yes, to answer your question, yes. What I will tell you that you should be aware of, that in the 25-year CIP plan, there are future fire station locations for, well, I'll come back to Crozier. Thank you for that. Let me forget that.
I am aware of Crozier being antiquated.
Future locations across the county. One is Oilville, okay, one is Matthews Road, and the other is Rock Castle being the very furthest, longest outlay in that 25-year CIP plan. But yes, Crozier Company too. We are actively looking for property along Cardwell Road that we would like to be south of Genito or Taylor Road to future rebuild of Fire Station 2 in Crozier. And then Fire Station 2 in Crozier has a very small footprint, and we have septic field challenges and not enough room there for expansion. It affects the number of staff that we can have on duty here at Station 2. Thank you.
How far off are we from knowing what we expect Station 8 to cost?
Oh, gosh.
November's-
Construction documents probably out to bid by November 1 is our goal. Then you let it sit on the market for 30, 45 days, roughly mid-December, January.
I'd like to see that number so we can digest it and say, get moving, and we know Station 8 is in process before we take on another project. And just so we know the scale, the scope, and have the difficult conversations of 8 million versus 13, and what those could be and what they entail. Because I do believe if we do 8 right, we are benefiting the entire network of our fire and rescue system.
Absolutely.
And that's a key focal point.
To a sense, we are putting one before the other chronologically because we paused 7. And had we not done that, that would be underway by now, probably. Oh, ahead of 8, is that correct?
Probably be done.
Yeah.
Be done.
So we did get sideways a little bit because we had certain expressions from citizens, and we did go out and try to find other locations and so forth and so on. And we paused it, and unfortunately, for those who didn't wonder where it's going to be, we had to come back to that because we couldn't find. I mean, you just got to strategically locate these things. You can't
Well,
put them
I don't
close
think-
to each other and so
I-
forth. You got to.
Even with the planning, Chief, correct me here, I don't think we realize the benefit of 8 as much as we do until we put an ambulance there during, when the,
Yeah, and that's
when the
been
roundabout.
learning.
would be
You're exactly right.
Right, so I think that sort of really helped reshuffle some of the priority as well, because
I'm not
response
saying I
times are
regret
going
it.
from 15 minutes to 4, it's a big deal.
Eight's made a tremendous difference
Yeah.
as temporary quarters since April of 2023. Run over 1,000 calls. I was shocked in July that 8 ran 74 ambulance calls. And I haven't looked at the August numbers yet, but I don't expect it to be much difference.
Mr. Lyle, Mr. Christie, any thoughts on putting this out to bid for design services now or later?
Sooner's better.
Some sick people in this district too.
Christie?
My only concern would be is if we end up with 2 completely different. I'd like them to be, the designs and everything to be comparable. So I don't know if that's in question here.
Well, ultimately, if the decision would be to at least put it out for procurement, that doesn't mean that we have to even award a contract. We don't have to accept the design. We don't have, we wouldn't have to move forward. I think the question is, do we at least want to solicit from the market A&E services right now, or do we want to wait?
I'm indifferent to it.
Yeah.
honestly.
I'm blown away when I go up Ashland Road and I see how much progress they're making on Amazon and Strickland. That the more services we have down there, the better and the sooner.
One thing that if we do move forward with steps, I really do want it to take into account the topographical challenges of that site and the fact that it is near a curve, and not go into it thinking that the design and build is going to be similar to a flat piece of land that will be much easier to construct. And if we go in eyes wide open, then that's fine, because that is going to be material. That is going to materially impact the budget.
Yeah. Okay, that's helpful. This is another topic that I wanted to move forward in the time that we were together is Old Goochland Elementary School. And so we have about 20 minutes before we turn it off over to the schools. And so you all have had the chance to walk, see, feel, experience this space. And so ultimately we have 29,000 square feet for available use. We are going through the process of a space study for non-judicial purposes. And so our hope is that by mid-fall, we have the results of that. But many of you have experienced our community development spaces and other spaces within county government here and elsewhere. And so ultimately, again, the ask would be here is once we get this space study completed, would we want to solicit bids for the services of choosing an architect who ultimately would make a design of how we potentially could use the old GES to meet the needs of our administration moving forward. And so if the desire is to move forward, we can start to do some work behind the scenes, start to build that RFP and start to get this ready. So by the time the space study would be completed, we would have an RFP ready to hit the market. So we would just be kind of getting some things, our ducks in a row, so to speak, so that when the time would come, we could leverage that and move that forward. But just wanted to get your thoughts on this, the sense of urgency that maybe the board has or does not have, and making some more forward momentum on this topic.
So by your statements and the question, it appears that a decision has already been made on the usage of this. You said, meet the needs of administration. And I've said from the beginning, if we just make this more government offices, we have categorically failed. We have not brought in anything unique to Goochland. We've not brought in anything to us. But I just want to clarify, that's what you're saying. Like, this is to go to design for more government offices.
Yeah, that's
So we've been
ultimately
waiting
a
for-
decision
Yeah,
point.
right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I've expressed myself. I think the current conditions that our staff working in are not acceptable. They're shoehorned in this area like sardines in a can. And, you know, we really need for our people to look forward to coming to work in the morning, and we need to provide them with good working conditions, physical working conditions. So I'm in support, but along with your thinking, not just to build stuff and fill it up.
Well, for 3 years.
And I
we've
think
been-
we have the existing need.
For 3 years, we were told we probably wouldn't land here, and now we're told, hey, we want to go do this, and, you know, I just,
How much is this gonna cost? That's,
The total renovation.
no. The bid for architecture and engineering
To
services.
prepare the
Just-
bid, document staff time
Yeah.
behind the scenes, that we would just prepare the document to be ready to put on the public market. We don't know how much it would cost to actually operationalize the design.
No,
Once we
I'm
choose
just saying,
architect.
to get get the bids, get the, general design, get the, for lack of a better term, dog and pony show from the potential developer. And I'll give you the reason. Let's just say for argument's sake, it's $100,000.
Yeah.
If we, in 3 months' time, can say, we have this option, and it costs us, it costs us $100,000 to get here, yes, and then in 3 months' time, we have, what is the market willing to give us for this site, and do best economic use, which is a valid recommendation for it, then I think we can make that, have that decision
Yeah.
can I
made.
ask a follow-up question, Charlie?
Yeah.
So I feel like, to your point, we've spent a lot of money on studies. I've not seen a result of a study of the space.
Yeah, one of the things we asked, the current process that's going on right now is I have asked them to change their scope whereby they could give us a drawing that says, here's hypothetically how you could put staff in this space.
But no other options.
We do have some work that was done by staff a few months ago, and Sarah can certainly speak to that a little bit more. There were some options of commercial usage and different things. That work has been done informally.
I've heard senior living, I've heard boutiques, kind of WeWork, incubator space. CTE. I've heard that Virginia Film maybe could use it instead of Reynolds. Where are those options? Because I'm with Mr. Spoonhour, it's like, we're gonna use it for administration.
Yeah.
And I have not seen any of the work that Sarah had commissioned. I think they spent some EDA money on it, did they not? Or resources were invested.
Sarah, you want to talk a little bit about
Yeah.
what has been done?
Yeah, sure. So we did contract with an architectural firm, and we do have some potential mock-ups of what the former Goochland Elementary School could be used for. Now, it's important to keep in mind that there's actually almost four separate buildings over there. You have the CTE building, which is still under utilization for the next 5 or so years. You have the two-story core elementary school. You have the octagonal building, And then you have a little bit of what is the old school auditorium, if you will. It's got kind of a kitchen into it as well. So they took all of those and made some estimates as to uses that could go in there. We looked at things like a hotel. A hotel would take the entire, all 4 of those to make it work. I've talked to 2 hoteliers. They weren't interested. They did some economic analysis of the area, and they just said that there was not enough hotel rooms that they could get to make the money work for them. They also looked at daycare centers. So there are options, and it's almost like a little bit of a puzzle piece. So you can do the 2 core, the core elementary school into government offices and still have room for child care center, potentially in the CTE building. You could still do potential restaurants in the old kitchen, auditorium. You could do potential restaurant in the CTE building.
So what I'm hearing is a lot of options that
Yes.
maybe we should actually have been presented before we are asked to make a decision, not just going with one.
That there are a lot of options. Yes.
Something just comes to my mind too is, we just talked earlier about building 65,000 additional square foot building in the courthouse, and we're not gonna tear anything down that I know about, is that correct? So, but and I know the timing is different, okay, so we have an immediate need, as I've said, I would like to move forward getting some relief for our planning folks, but we probably ought to be thinking about, the office space we're gonna have over the next 5 to 10 years available to us, which will free up, as a result of the courthouse.
So what I'm hearing is this is probably too premature at this point in time. Need
Well,
additional information.
Okay, I've got some
Yeah.
comments.
Yeah.
So at a higher level, like basically this meeting, CIP meeting, we were discussing, how should we fund the CIP, what should fall under the CIP. This definitely falls under the CIP.
Yeah.
I would argue that with all of these projects, the fire stations, courthouse, inflation, bridging the gap, and the old school would be an acceptable thing to issue for a bond issuance. And if we move forward with all of these going out to bid, then we get those numbers sooner, and we get all of these projects potentially funded through one. I don't know enough about the bond issuance process, but potentially a one and done bond issuance.
No one big umbrella.
Right.
But to what Dr. Riley is saying, it's for a very specific need that we haven't even got.
Right, yeah, that's a fair point.
So given that, I think the next step would be for us to receive the space study, which is going to include the usage of this current facility, that options for consideration. You couple that with the work that's been done by the staff prior to now, and then we have a presentation on potential options for what the old GES could be used for, not be used for. We deliberate on that a little bit and determine some next steps. So this is probably something that we need to slow down just a pinch on.
I think this is a good place for this line of discussion. Is Mr. Winfrey and I had a situation probably in the last 6 to 8 months where a group of individuals was tasked, what do you want this to look like? And the messaging to them was, make it distinct to Goochland. And then they said, well, what does that mean? What does that mean? We responded to them, make it distinct to Goochland. And the only add-on to that was, I said, if you give me something that is 500 yards across the line in our neighboring county, I will ball it up and throw it in the trash can. And it was funny. About 80% came back with what I would have liked to ball up and throw in the trash can, but they were electronic. But a couple wowed us. And it was simply from the very start sending that message. If you come with what worked in X, Y, and Z just because we will call you out on it and we will not move forward. And something like this, I really think of a messaging, hey, this is in our courthouse. This is in our master bedroom or kitchen, whatever we want to call it. It better look different. It better tell a story. It better knock our socks off. And I think those are those type of front end. That's the type of front end messaging that I don't know that we've had historically.
Yeah.
And nothing, I think this project, especially just given where it is to the heart of this county, really sings to something one of a kind.
Yeah, perfect. Great conversation. Great conversation. Well, with some time that we have left before we transition to schools, wanted to at least forecast some other things. We talked about a lot here today, and I know it can certainly be overwhelming, especially when you think about a 25-year plan. And just for the benefit of the audience, our 25-year plan was created in order to inform our capital impact model, which plays a role in the proffers that are offered as far as new construction. So 25 years can be a lot to really understand and internalize, but 5 years is a little bit closer. You can kind of get your hands around that a little bit more. And so we just wanted to start to forecast some of the things that are in the current plan in the next 5 years that I don't know how much conversation has been had in private or public settings, maybe some more than others, but at least wanted to summarize some of these things so you could also see some of the other needs that have not been discussed here today, everywhere from needs that the school division may have, as well as ensuring the security of our network and our data that we have as an organization, and supports for first responders, law enforcement, fire rescue, and just some technological needs as we continue to be a high-functioning modern organization. So at least wanted to get some visibility on these for you so that you're aware of those things. We do have a few minutes, and we have subject matter experts that are in the room in case you wanted to ask any specific questions about what these projects might be.
Should we look to this and to this for the 5 years to kind of?
Sure. Yeah, and if there are other things in the 5 years that you wanted to dig in on, now would be a good time to do that.
We are showing funding resources on this.
Yes, these are forecasted, planned for, not yet funded.
Tyler Munis, SAAS mitigation. What is that?
So Tyler Munis is our main accounting software.
Okay.
And then what is that, storage as a service? Where's Dan?
Software as a service.
Software as a service?
Yeah. Dan, can you help us out on that?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry if you didn't hear it all.
Yeah.
Mr. Winfrey's asking about the details on the Tyler Munis storage as a service migration.
Yes, it's projecting to start late this winter, this fall, and it's basically going from on-prem to their cloud service, which they're rolling over to all their clients, everybody who's using Tyler will be eventually one of their cloud systems.
So, Munis is our financial software that's also tied to HR functions and a variety of things. It's a pretty core service for us.
Is that a recurring cost? I mean, this
No.
is a migration, but.
This is a total. I was just about to point that out. That 1.2 is the total for those 4 years.
Sure, so why wouldn't we expense those and make those operational instead of CIP?
Because it's a one-time, I think of operational as a recurring every year purchase, and this is a one-time big project.
It's just a 4-year project.
Oh, all right.
Are we gonna have backups on this? I mean, like, on our own hard drive? We get nervous about putting all our accounting stuff on a
Right.
cloud.
Dan, can you speak to that a little bit?
We will not have that capability, but they will be responsible for backing up and all that store capability.
Is this an example of what's happening to drive the need for additional data centers? Because everybody's loading up the cloud,
Exactly, yes. A lot of vendors are moving
and
that
we're
way.
probably a drop in the bucket compared to what's happening out there.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a cost to having software on site and servers on site, the maintenance of all that. There is a cost, so it's a cost benefit of on premises versus on the cloud that, ultimately we'll have to work through in the future.
So, Dr. Riley, just a few questions. Carla, so for county vehicles, I don't see any of that in here. Is that operational, or we're just
Yes, if you recall, we had this big discussion when we were adopting the FY '26 budget. Replacement vehicles and even new vehicles, those are all recurring. Every year, we would put
Yeah.
the same dollar amount for sheriff's replacement vehicles, for county replacement vehicles, for server upgrades. It was always for general maintenance things. Because they were happening every year at about the same cost, those are now in
Fair
operations.
enough.
Yep.
So, not to be selfish, but we do see a ton of usage of Central High Complex, and about half of that building has, can be utilized. We're talking about space. I think we had put some money in the budget to to demolish the auditorium potentially. But I don't see anything in here for the next 25 years that doing anything with that space.
It's on here. I'll find it.
Yeah.
Central High?
Yeah.
I see the line item, but there's no money.
But that does bring up
It
a,
is, well,
go ahead, please.
it's in fiscal year '29, $350,000.
It's certainly in this.
Under
one.
general services, it's it's about halfway down the page.
Oh, I was looking at Parks and Rec, so, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, Parks and Rec would make sense since they're over there, but that's under general services.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yep.
And then the last thing, and I know we don't have this, we're not looking at utility CIP right now. I would love to know, it was kind of surprising to me that we only have utilities on half of the side of this road. We have a lot of failing septic systems on the other side.
Right.
So I'd love to see, at some point, maybe this is a 2x2 discussion, but what is the plan to expand the utility?
Master plan, so, that will be a topic of conversation, will get a lot of attention in the fall, as well as a utilities master plan. So that work has been happening behind the scenes, and it's going to be public here in the coming months as well. And so, board members, I neglected to show this slide, and so there's also some important topics that we haven't talked about yet either, which are related to transportation, road improvements, utilities. I do highlight again Ridgefield Pump Station, Central High School, as Mr. Spoonhour mentioned. And then, yes, starting to think about the county's role in future land acquisition. And we talked a little bit about economic development and having a plan for how we would want to acquire land in the future. So I brought that forward as a topic of conversation just quickly because that's something that could position us well in the future for overall sustainability in the community. So, a lot of things that we're going to have to come back on another work session maybe like this or through the budget season, because there are so many things that just are really important, but we wanted to highlight a few things as well.
I want to recall Mr. Spoonhour's comments earlier about the ad valorem tax, and letting it be known that this significant revenue generation is largely centered in District 4, and it's great ties to this in that utilities Ridgefield Pump Station, that is largely attributable to our needs in the West Creek area. Traffic improvements to Ashland Road, attributable to Rocky and other, not Rocky, Amazon and anything more. Land acquisitions for strategic economic developments, I've seen several in District 4. Parks and Rec Master Plan projects will certainly have that. 9/11 Communications Tower in Eastern Goochland. So these are coming down the pipe, and I feel very confident in the benefits we are going to see. We won't count our chickens before they're hatched, but I think there is a strong level of confidence and desire to see the economic transformation they can make.
Yeah.
But these are the projects that will be coming down the pipe with funding needs that are directly attributable to those projects.
Chief and I had an interesting conversation coming back looking at the fire station in Matoka, Chesterfield. And I read BizSense, and Mr. Sloan is doing a great job of keeping us up to date with a lot of business articles. He's still okay, a lot to read.
More articles.
But it's interesting that how many of these projects contribute to these things. This project is giving $100,000 to CTE. this project's building a fire station, this project's doing this. So how do we build the skill set into that, like, it's kind of like who's courting who at some point, and I think we're gonna get to the point, Charlie's comments, if we continue to grow Goochland and infrastructure excellently, like we're planning to, we can be in the driver's seat to say, okay, what are you kicking in to come here?
Right.
So how do we build that skill set of, we're not always begging people, but there's, we're getting mutual benefit out of them coming in and providing some of these things.
Okay,
Go ahead.
well, I was just trying to say, before we transition in the block to the schools,
Take a quick
can
break.
we
so
take a
can
quick break
get their
and
stuff
maybe
on.
get back here about 5 minutes after 2?
Are you taking public?
No, we're not taking a
Okay.
break. Yeah, all right, so let's come back for a break in 5 minutes.
Dr. Ridley.
Thanks.
Will we fix that?
To answer your question, yes, sir.
Further.
Are you ready? Let's rock and roll. Dr. Armstrong.
All right. Good afternoon, board members, Dr. Rayleigh. On behalf of Ms. Moses, who I think is on the way back in, and Ms. Robinson, I just want to first thank you all for giving us the opportunity to participate today. And as you all know, our facilities, our capital improvement plan, just like for the county, it is I like to say, the tangible return on the investment of every citizen in this county. Whether you are a parent of a child in our school division or not, we want our facilities to be safe, inviting, comfortable, and efficient. And just excited to share a little bit more with you all today, really a 10,000-foot bird's eye view of some of our needs. Of course, the board will work together this fall to refine any of our requests for your consideration, but we're also working to revise our strategic plan. Everything we do goes back to our strategic plan and is grounded in that, and one of our goals, and this is from our 2020-26 strategic plan, we're going to be revising this for the close of the school year, but we, again, prioritize maintenance and creation of sustainable facilities and equipment, and making sure our facilities are safe on behalf of all of our students, our staff, and our families. Our capital improvement plan, it's fascinating just listening to your conversation. It's a great learning experience for me, but it's also encouraging that a lot of our goals around capital planning are aligned with your vision as well. And we want, I know from my experience in Goochland, I'm conditioned to be very efficient, to be very conservative in how we spend, to make sure we're accounting for every single penny. I learned that from someone in my previous experience, but also it's great to hear about the need to have best-in-class facilities. Our facilities are a retention tool. Over half of our employees do not work in Goochland or do not live in Goochland County. They drive past other school divisions to come here every day. So part of what keeps them here is the fact that we maintain our facilities well. They're comfortable. They've got small classes. They've got the resources they need. But it's also symbolic. When they see this community come together to build a new Goochland Elementary School and make that happen, it symbolizes to our staff that, hey, we matter here. And that means something to our staff. So we really appreciate that. I do want to go through just briefly our progress highlights since 2020. Some of those, what I call 0 to 2 year, just short-term priority projects, some of which have already been funded and encumbered. Others we'll be talking about more this fall. And then talk about the big ticket items, which I think would include the secondary complex improvements, the CT addition, as well as weapons detection systems. And let's take a minute, and I want everyone to interrupt me at any time to talk about the long-term future of Byrd and Randolph Elementary Schools. If you look at that spreadsheet, you'll see those bolded. Those are highlights looking out to fiscal years 2035 and 2040. I do want to take a minute, though. I always tell people that my first day on the job, when I came to Goochland in 2016, less than 10 years ago, Dr. Rayleigh put me in a car and drove me around this entire division. And at that time, we had gravel parking lots at both Byrd and Randolph. We didn't have any automation for our comfort HVAC systems in the division, and that was intermittently functioning in some places. We had leaky roofs. We have made incredible progress, I think, in that short period of time. Safety enhancements, and you can see here, I just put some of the highlights that I just want to point out in appreciation for this board and our school board, their work in making that happen for the last 10 years. It means a lot. Parking lot expansion in the middle and high school, we just repaved our stadium parking lot behind the high school this summer. You'll probably see that if you drive down Bulldog Way, and of course the new elementary school. I know there's been some conversation, that's maybe something we want to tackle right now, about vehicle replacement. My understanding is that during last year's discussion, we're moving toward making vehicle replacement more of an operational cost than a capital cost. And I'm getting some nods of the heads, and I know there was a time when we would split that between both operational and capital requests, but I know we're going to move toward making that more of a consistent operational request. So just wanted to make sure I highlighted that as well.
Dr. Armstrong, I'm sorry.
Yep.
When you're referencing vehicle replacement, are you talking about your white fleet, your vans, your sedans, and your yellow school buses?
Did the whole, yes, and I want to look back at my team, sorry. This is Stephanie Weiss, our Director of Finance, Dr. Wagner, Assistant Student Administration, Glenn Forbes, Director of Maintenance, and yes, that refers to our entire fleet.
So I believe in fiscal year 2026, we put an even 500,000 towards operational that used to be in CIP,
Yes.
which maybe probably didn't cover as much as was needed, but that was what was in 26.
Right. Right now, 0 to 2 year projects, some of these are in progress right now. We already mentioned the chiller project, and when we talk about the CIP, it's usually not the sexiest part of the work you do, right? It's not forward facing. We've got guys on the roofs, you've got the wiring in the walls, you've got the plumbing. The chiller is one of those projects, but it's not a cheap one either, but we are in the design phase in that. Anticipating hopefully by first of the year 27 that we can have that project complete, but we're working through that now. And then some other projects that we'll be working through and that are already in progress in the next year. Installing new school zone flashing lights. That sounds really simple, but with the technology upgrades on that, we currently have to send one of our technicians, Chris Richmond, who has to manually get to the light, into the box to create the timers, and when the time changes, you have to manually do that. We have software now that we're looking to purchase that can control that remotely, which is, will be a big benefit for him.
Well, if it's any consolation, he also does it for our neighborhood, so he's transferring his skills multiple ways.
That doesn't surprise me. We have an amazing team in our division, but the heat recovery unit rebuilds, that's ongoing at the high school. We've done a ton of work in our HVAC and roof systems in the last 5 years, and right into the last minute this summer at the secondary complex, we were kind of following behind with the custodial staff behind the work they were doing on the roof, but got all that done and still working through the last few phases of that. Our fire panel at the high school, and then replacing some hot water heaters at the G-Tech Workforce Development Building. So these have all been encumbered and funded. Just want to give you all an update on some of the things that we've got going on as we speak. Some ideas that we have about priority projects that have yet to be requested and really refined by our board. Again, some very systems, technical type projects that we would see being needs in the next year. There's a motor control system that automates the chiller and boiler systems that is really critical to include in that project. That also comes at a fairly decent $300K price tag. Replacing the boiler at the Middle High complex will be nearly $750,000. And then one item I want to talk about more separately is our weapons detection. I believe the board's had some conversation about that in the past year. I've had an opportunity to visit Louisa and to see some of the work they've been doing with that as well, and we'll talk more about that in a slide that's coming up. I do want to take a minute. I know sometimes the board members roll their eyes with me on this, but I do want to take the opportunity just to mention, after talking to Mr. Cock as well about his master plan with Parks and Rec, for future consideration. It's not a priority need, but thinking about athletic field improvements at the Jude Goochland High School Stadium. Right now, I'd say we're the exception rather than the rule when it comes to the surface that our athletes play on at the high school. Most schools, our neighbor schools, have adopted an artificial turf field. We still maintain our grass field. And I know there's nostalgia for the grass. I know there's been some questions about safety as well, but I think a lot of that is antiquated now. It's been 10 or 15 years. There's ongoing cost of maintaining a grass field too. We have to crown it, we have to irrigate it, we have to mow it, we have to overseed it. And then the other part too is that we're now playing our sports, middle and high school, at 5 different locations. Now, turfing the field, you say, well, that doesn't give me any more field space, but it does make that field more usable for lacrosse. Lacrosse, football, there's different spikes, different needs. Having a turf field, just from the perspective of efficiency, would help, and it would also, it would just look great. I'm not gonna lie, I sit there at graduation, look out in that field, and I think to myself, that beautiful green field, the red end zones with the gold Goochland, it would look great, but that's, of course, my personal piece I'll add to that. So it's not insignificant, I know.
I'm assuming that with motor control on the boiler and chillers, we're going to see efficiencies and the energy bill might decrease.
I think you'll see efficiencies, not just from the motor control, but from upgrading all of those different systems as well.
I'm not going to say they're going to pay for themselves. That sounds like a Dominion ad, but it would be somewhat offset. And then with the weapons detections, given some of the focus on that, are there grants available federally or state that might offset some of that?
There are, and we have applied for safety grants for this. However, we tend to
not see too much come of that because of our high local composite index in Goochland. We typically don't, however, we do have some applications that are in a few inboxes right now to help fund that, but I'm not too optimistic on how much we would receive, but we'll make it happen.
All right, thank you.
So, but the last thing about the stadium, it's the centerpiece. Really, we have Friday night football games, graduations, probably the most, I would say the most populated gatherings in this county on a regular basis. And other than the fireworks, I would say, which also take place in the complex. And we also foresee having graduation at the high school for the foreseeable future due to cost increases at some of the other locations around. So just wanted to put in that.
So for facilities, I mean, a grass turf, you're spending how much a year keeping that in
Well,
turf?
the upkeep is minimal. It would not be as much as a grass field, which would require all.
No, how much are we spending on grass?
On
grass field?
It depends. We had a year, I guess it was probably 5 years ago, Dr. Rayleigh, when we had to do extensive work with the irrigation and crowning. We had a sinkhole. So there were some years when we spent tens of thousands of dollars and had to go out to procurement for it. The regular maintenance, and I can get a number for you all, the seeding, mowing, staff time, I would take a good guess here, but I would think probably $5,000 to $10,000 a year, maybe more.
I think probably a little more.
Right.
Oh, okay, good. It's not hundreds of thousands.
No. Just wanted to put that in there once.
Go ahead, Dr. Armstrong. Can we, as we've got this large project in the forefront in 2027, can you address planning for that already? Resources available? Are we going to be stretched? Because I do really think, and so I make sure we're talking about the same thing. Secondary building is the one behind school, is where the administration sits right now, correct?
Or
Is
our
effectively
central office.
set back behind the sheriffs and the courts. Secondary is a good term because it doesn't put Goochland schools out in the, visible as much as I think it could be. If we're doing a large project and we also have a courthouse project coming very soon thereafter, I don't think it would be a misused building. I think it could get used better serving law and the courts and all that. And you have a big project on the forefront yourself. Do we have the resources and the staff to manage it if that project were to be made larger, to take advantage of the economies of scale of building and, while building is taking place?
And just to be clear, you're referring to the annex building where our current office is occupied by
Yes.
our rescue. That,
Yeah.
And I want to be careful, it's a county building, so I don't want to speak too much on its behalf, but I would say that we participated in the space study that came ago, and I want to look back at my team here. Do we have the space right now to operate what we need to do in our central office? We spend a lot of time in the schools where, it's not I wouldn't call our office a high traffic when it comes to outside visitors type of space. However, I will say on Chief Ferguson's behalf, I see him back there, I believe Chief Ferguson is busting at the seams downstairs. And we were able to work with them to give them some more office space, the storage needs that they have there, and it is an aging building. So ideally, if you were to wave a wand, would it be better for our offices to be somewhere more central, more closer to the schools to say, or to improve that facility? Sure, but I want to be cognizant of kind of the bigger needs in the county as well.
I think it does speak to our earlier conversation, though, as we zoom out, think about total county needs. How does the space study inform the use of that annex building, the old GES, the judicial complex? Like, how do all the dominoes fall in the big picture?
And also, second question, do you feel like you could have more connectivity with your staff to be more centrally located?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'd love to say, our superintendent is on site, and
we just get in the car and we go. But at the same time,
I get it.
Dr. Wagner, Ms. Weisher, I had some space that was closer to the secondary complex or even attached to the secondary complex, that would be amazing because you've got a critical mass of students there every day.
Yeah.
But we're going to be on the road no matter what, going from Burr to Randolph and everywhere in between. But I appreciate the question. Other, we talked about the weapons detection. We'll get into that in a minute. And I just want to mention the CT addition and the middle high school improvements. Now, I'm careful about my verbs there because I think when I look back at the language from the original bond, I went last night and revisited that and remembered taking the road tour back in 2021 when we were doing that. And it talks about not just the CT addition, but and/or interior renovations to modernize classrooms, provide additional space for fine arts, and/or an auxiliary gym and wrestling room. I think both boards have heard from our wrestling team in that community. They're currently working out of the old Gooch Elementary School, which has been good for them. They appreciate that. But long term, of course, as we talk about that facility, then that's not going to be an option on the table. But the CT addition is going to be the largest portion of that bond funded project. And we know that as it sits now at $18.2 million, kind of like the conversation with the courthouse, given from what I've heard about similar construction being done in the region with the CT addition, that won't cover the price. I do think that if we look at adding it to the existing secondary complex, land preparation costs should be minimal, I would hope. It was designed, you can see, you got sidewalks in certain places. It was designed to accommodate some expansion. When we built the elementary school, I feel like we put so much money into land preparation there, and I don't think we would realize the same for this addition. But at the same time, even that out of the question, it will exceed the $18.2 million just for that CT addition. And the thing I'll mention about it, and all these things tie together. So next week, our board's going to consider signing the lease for leasing back the GTEC facility from the county. And right now at GTEC, we host our heavy equipment program, our culinary program, nurse aid, EMT, carpentry. Bruce is here. I think I've covered everybody there. So within 5 years, theoretically, we need to have a space for all of those programs, but we're also right now looking to expand into some workforce demanded programs around robotics, mechatronics, and logistics, as well as expand our agriculture education program. So ideally, this facility that will be on site at the Goochland Middle School, High School complex will be able to accommodate these programs. As you can imagine, those are all very different. The space needs are very different for what you need for heavy equipment versus what you need for robotics versus what you need for agriculture. We know that. It's going to have to be a flexible space. It's going to require a lot of very deliberate planning, I think, to design that well. It's going to save us efficiencies in transportation. We shuttle kids back and forth right now from the middle high complex, and we have to pay a driver to do that and get a bus on the road and do that every period throughout the day for 180 days a year. So where we are now with that, the dust is literally just settling on the new GES project, but we're excited and we just want to get both boards to start talking about, okay, what's our next step? Is it going out to architecture and design? We know there's a expiration date on the use of bond funds. We know that, and we talked earlier about moving these forward expeditiously. It's just hard for me to get a really good handle on what the cost of this is going to be without getting some experts in to really start.
So you don't have a ballpark?
I will tell you that in Louisa, I talked to Mr. Straley. I believe their CT edition, which was a lot bigger, mind you, they had like a skywalk from their school.
What is the size that you anticipate?
Square footage, I think I can't remember exactly what we had in the estimate.
30?
Yeah, and I think Louisa was in the mid-30s. There was a $35, $36 million project. Ours, I don't think would cost that much, but
20 more.
But what would it take to make it the best in the region?
That's a great question. And
I'm
that's
completely serious.
Yeah.
And is it forward-looking? You said it was robotics, mechatronics, logistics, et cetera. What about would it have the availability of other industries?
Ideally, yes, because we may want to look at biomedical. We've got other industries that we know are going to land in our community, and I want to be responsive to that. I want to be flexible enough to where I can adapt to that. And so that's what I need to find out, Mr. Spoonhour, is someone to tell us.
My first ever sit down with Dr. Raley was in that administration building. One of the first things I talked about was how do you make Goochland the beacon of CTE.
Yeah.
So I'm not wavering from that one bit. I say it all the time. I don't think the border's going to take down America. I don't think China's going to take down America. What the thing that's going to take down America is lack of service providers.
That's right. That's right. And one thing I've said, Mr. Spoonhour, even from my past experiences, in coming into this job, and I've talked to the board about this, I don't want any student who graduates to walk across the stage on Saturday night, wake up Sunday morning, not know what they're going to do the next day.
Yeah.
That's a failure on our part, whether that is going through straight to the workforce with a high demand credential, whether you're going into a 2-year college to do the same thing, 4-year university straight to the military. That's the way we've got to reconfigure our thinking around the services we provide to our kids. And this is an opportunity to really highlight that.
So I had a meeting with the Secretary of Labor last month, talking.
Slater.
Yeah. Just last month, talking about, we have all of this stuff coming to the region, and we're not prepared from it from a workforce perspective, nor a housing perspective. So 2 problems we have to solve. And there was a lot of interest in how do we partner, how do we work with your schools to build the programs necessary and get the funding from these corporations that are coming to say, hey, we're going to need robotics people. Like, we'll help fund some of that.
Yeah, and then break down the silos right now that we have, and then we're trying to enhance our work-based learning opportunities. We want to incentivize local businesses to partner with us to get our kids apprenticeships, to get them these credentials. Post-secondary as well, our dual enrollment opportunities, not just in preparing for a 4-year college transferable credit, but also for getting a CTE credential that you can get through JSARS or Brightpoint that you can earn before you graduate from high school. So it's, we call it a warm handoff. You walk across the stage, and the next day you got a job that's going to pay the bills, and that's got to be a priority for us. And to do that, kids need to know how to read. They got to have computational literacy. They got to have opportunities to be exposed to this. But this is an opportunity, I think, to make that very, very real and very tangible. All right, let's. So again, just the discussion point. I think we've kind of addressed this, and then we'll work with our board. But we would love to just think about our next steps for going out to get some further analysis around what this will look like, what it's going to cost, where the need's going to be, and I'm excited to get this off the ground as soon as possible.
Board members, may I ask a question, Dr. Armstrong? Are you thinking that your focus would be on the CTE spot, or you referenced on that slide that you have other things related to auxiliary gymnasium and those kind of things? Has there been any discussion about, of those projects, which one would be the priority? Would it be the CTE Center?
The CTE Center would be the priority, but I think it needs to happen in concert with some improvements, some of our fine arts facilities. Specifically thinking about our middle school band room, which when the middle school was designed, was not intended to be a band room. You all know Mr. Sykes, he does an amazing job over there, but the space that he works in is oddly shaped. There are places where, and we've made some improvements with our ceramics facilities. We've done that on our own for some other funding sources, but I think it needs to happen in concert with some of that as well, ideally. I know resources are finite, let's be honest, but that would be our wish. The auxiliary gym, we have the gym now at the new elementary school. We have a middle school gym. We have a high school gym. But the wrestling program continues to grow. Coach Wampler and his staff done an amazing job with that. Yes, in a perfect world, if we could get the first in class CTE edition, the best in the region, the best in the state, if we can get a better band room, fine arts facilities, and then we get an auxiliary gym that can serve the wrestling room, then we're checking off everybody's. But
So keep you around for another year or two?
That's ambitious. Yes.
That does raise a good point. Is with school districts, and I'm relying on your expertise, with school districts that invest more in a core area rather than having to split all these different resources across different campuses.
Right.
Do you see enhancement in doing that to the students in doing that, or to me it just seems like you really do get the chance to have those best in the region when you don't spread it out, and we have the benefit that our core campus is
right there.
I'm not a geography expert, but it seems to be in the dead center of our county.
I do think you bring up a good point, though, because I think your board's going to have to decide, do we want to be sort of a jack of all trades, or do we want to go deep on certain things in a regional view of, okay, Louise is going to focus on this aspect of it. Like, are there things that we should be doing? I don't know the answer to that,
Yep.
but smart board, so I'll figure it out.
Yeah, and that'll be part of our strategic plan work as well,
Yeah.
that we're doing in the months ahead.
On that note, has it ever been done that, say, one CTE program from another locality specializes in X, and then another locality specializes in Y? Is it possible to have an exchange student kind of program?
We do it now.
Okay.
We actually have that with Powhatan. We have 2 students from Powhatan to come, excuse me, and take our EMT classes, which they don't offer. There's a time when we would send students to Powhatan, I believe, for cosmetology, several years back. Electricity. And there's a lot of talk about how we can really strengthen those regional collaborations. Think about the efficiency. I mean, when you're running all these facilities, the equipment that's needed for that, not just with K-12 division to K-12 division, but K-12 with community colleges, where they had a diesel lab at the old J. Sarge. Where are places that we can find that? Now, part of it's logistics, the transportation time to get a kid from living on Shannon Hill who's got to then take a bus to the high school and then somehow get to Powhatan and do it. It's not a short trip. So you do run into some challenges there, but it's doable, and I think it's something we got to think about. Pivoting a bit to weapons detection, kind of like the turf field, we're becoming the exception rather than the rule with this as well. I don't want us to be in a position where, especially in this topic, where we're falling short in any way, shape, or form when it comes to school safety. Dr. Rayleigh and I, in 2018, I believe, the Parkland shooting happened in Florida, we were able to take advantage of a lot of resources to make some tremendous improvements in this division with safety, not just with our facilities and some of the projects we did there physically, but with our processes, with our staffing. Appreciative of the sheriff's office too. We have an SRO in every single building, which, there's some divisions that don't employ SROs, period. And we're just really lucky to have that partnership. Weapons detection systems have come a long way. It's not probably what you imagine if you watch an 80s movie of schools that have metal detectors. It's they're portable. They're designed intelligently to detect guns and knives. It's not going to alert on every single piece of metal that you have on you. And they've been in use now for a while. They're portable too. So if we have graduation, we don't need to keep these mounted at the stadium every day when we don't have anything going on. Now for games and events, we can get them out there. They're not cheap, but when we think about the value of this and the potential risk, I think it's a wise investment. It would also have to be staffed. So I know there was talk earlier about a systematic formulaic way of, okay, what's the threshold when it comes to capital improvements for that human capital part of this? And then that would need to be taken into account for this. We would want to have either additional school safety officers or current staff, and they have to make it a duty to man these units as well. So because they're kind of useless, and you don't have someone standing there with it. So $500,000, and then I'll let Dr. Wagner speak up. She's done a lot of work on this even prior to my arrival, but that would account for the cost of equipment installation, not just one per school, but that would account for several of these units at different entrances, especially in our middle-high complex where you have various places. Anything you want to add on that? Great. All right. I rarely do that, so thank you. But I just want to take any questions on that.
Have the programs that have offered, the vendors who have pitched to you, offered different solutions for secondary level education versus primary level education? And I say that because I always wince when a kindergartner is having to go through that. If we're only the innocence of why am I doing this? But I don't want to risk their safety one bit. But I do, have they done it where they're disguised or, utilized better at elementary schools? So it's not quite
it's in your face.
In your face.
Yeah, and I haven't. I don't know if you've gotten any demos of having variation level to level. I haven't heard of that. I know statistically, remember we talked about this, a lot of the school violence incidences that take place at elementary schools, the ones you hear about in the news don't, but statistically are more domestic in nature. Parent custody issues, and whereas secondary issues would be more of what you call an active shooter situation. Nonetheless,
Newport News would probably differ with you.
They would, and that's just it. And that's the can't take that risk. You just can't. Could we do it in a way that was maybe more thoughtful? And I don't know if you saw anything in your demos. Go ahead.
So we've really partnered with the Louisa County Public Schools over the past year to really look at how they implemented their weapons detection systems. They were super intentional about how they did it. And so we could look at implementing weapons detection systems in many ways. It could start with just weapons detection systems like that at our football stadiums during football games, at graduation. We could consider just doing weapons detection systems at the middle and high complex. Regardless, Louisa County has given us all of their materials from how they rolled out. I'm sure Dr. Armstrong is going to mention a school safety task force, which is a way that we can gain some community buy-in before we start putting these types of systems in our schools to make sure that the community understands the story. Because we don't want the community to think that we have unsafe schools. This is just another layer of protection in a much broader safety plan.
But as far as the equipment goes, I don't think it varies. I don't think it's that unit's that unit. The decision, like Jen said, is whether or not how we strategically install these and where we do it.
The dilemma with bringing up a great comp close to us is you now have to provide us at least 4 reasons why ours is way better than Melissa's when I ask you in 6 months' time. So please be
I've
ready.
been conditioned to that too.
Dr.
Is
Armstrong?
is the sheriff gonna look into these, make sure that everything?
He's been alongside us
Okay.
on this. Actually, Sergeant Leawood came with us to that school safety task force, and we've met with him a few times, and he's, I don't think I'm going too far out to speak on his behalf, where he would be supportive of what we're doing.
Okay.
I know when Ms. Robinson had me reading at Randolph, the DOGS program, is there any opportunity to get retired military, retired
The
public safety?
Watchdogs program.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and that's,
To not only increase their presence
Right.
in interaction, but they get to greet the kids every day as they come in.
we got this question yesterday in our 2x2, Ms. Robinson, and we know our elementary schools, and I was a middle school principal, we had it too, and for you, those of you who don't know what Mr. Lau is referring to, the Watchdog program brings in adult role models, typically parents, grandparents who just want to come in and volunteer and be around the schools and free kids off the bus and then be a presence, and we are absolutely open to expanding that wherever we can, and we welcome anyone who wants to come and volunteer, go through a background check that we require of every volunteer, and
I took mine.
come on, exactly.
DOG stands for Dads of Great Students,
Thank
is how it
you.
was
Yes.
originally termed. It's an acronym for getting parents into the schools to support the cause.
Distinguished old gentleman should.
So we'll continue to refine this, and the board and I will work together to gather more information, just give you all a real complete picture of the options that are available and the cost and how we would propose moving forward with that. In the next 5 years, I wanted to give a quick overview of some of the projects that we'll be seeing at our elementary schools. You can see that the Bird and Randolph projects kind of mirror each other, and none of these are kind of major cost. I mean, they're all major costs, right? But there's several components to each of these: roof replacements, bathroom upgrades, windows, lighting, electrical, a lot of the nuts and bolts that you're going to have to deal with in an aging facility. Bird and Randolph were built originally in 1959. They both have gone through 2 or 3 phases of renovation since then, the most recent one happening at Bird in 1997, I believe. So we're getting toward 30 years since the last renovation at Bird in a school that's approaching 70-some years old. So that's just going to be what we're going to have to expect right now for the upkeep. Now, Goose Elementary School, I did want to highlight the solar panels, and I had this conversation, and some of you may remember, we did a lot of work a few years back to see if this was an efficient proposal for any of our schools, and we really found at that time it wasn't, because you've got to be generating a certain amount of wattage coming off the solar panels to justify the cost, and we weren't seeing that in our facilities, their age, their orientation physically and geographically. However, we were told, and we haven't gone too far down this road, that GES, we couldn't realize some efficiencies there, that we could realize some cost savings if we would consider installation of solar panels. how you do that is, was a topic of great discussion in the community. We talked about it earlier. Do you do it on the roof? Do you do it out in the field? And we had some pretty strong opinions around that in the community. So we want to be sensitive to that if we did pursue that. But I wanted to put that on the radar for everybody as well. And then the stormwater filters are new technologies. They're called jellyfish filters. They're not cheap, Glenn. We are required to install those at the new elementary school, correct?
Correct. There's 28 of them. I'm sorry, there's 34 of them, and it's $28,000 to purchase a set. They're supposed to last 3 to 5 years. The school's so new, we don't know if we're going to get 3 or 5. It's an annual inspection that we're going to be performing, so that's a cost that's going to be ongoing to replace those filters.
So that begs the question, I mean, is that a capital or an operational expense? You know, now that we've heard your discussion today, just maybe think of that as well.
Are there any chemicals associated?
It's filters that hang down like
Okay.
jellyfish. They're very creative with the name.
Is it
But-
seaweed? Type things?
It's a paper material filter.
I got you, yeah.
And what is it filtering? Stormwater?
Stormwater, yes.
Learn something.
Not
It's
the
part
expert
of
on
the
that.
Save the Bay.
Yeah, it's watershed.
Bay.
And so
Thank
it's
you,
been
Mitch.
mandated by the feds or state?
I'm sure this is some type of EPA trickle down.
EPA or DEQ?
One or the other.
But they're
I'm
not funding it, are
Of course not.
Never did.
We wouldn't be here if they were.
Good. Can I ask you, this might be a subjective answer, but how many of these things are getting to this list that are, those lights are extremely out of date, that electrical panel is dangerous, that those bathrooms are really bad, versus, yeah, that's the useful life, and we've known for 8 years that's when those are going to need to be replaced?
I'd say it's the latter. We haven't, as I mentioned, the condition of these facilities, when I came here in 2016, we've gotten our facilities to the point where I don't think you're gonna walk around any place. You may say, wow, that tile is 1950s tile, but it's clean.
Yeah.
That bathroom, you know, is definitely traditional looking, but again, it's clean, the plumbing works.
Yeah.
So we don't have anything that's in a state of kind of like it has to be done now. This is more of just we're anticipating all of this that's gonna need some type of work. I mean, floor tiles, you're seeing things, you know, here and there, but nothing you would probably notice if you just happen to be coming to the building on any given day.
So I guess the point I'm getting to is putting these on 5 years doesn't deteriorate the level of service. It's more, there's enough proactivity
Absolutely.
in what we're doing. Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure we weren't being, there's a constant feeling of reactivity.
No.
Let
Good.
me just, can I add something?
Sure.
The roof replacements, that's just an age historically, the
Good.
roofs start to fail. So we start having to put money into that out of our operating budget to fix leaks and sealant tiles and carpet that gets wet. The bathroom upgrades, that's pretty much aesthetic. If you go into Bird and Randolph, those bathrooms look like they're 70-something years old. So that gets into what do we get in the community when parents come through. The window replacements, they're extremely old. A lot of them are original, so they're starting to fail. Again, that's more money that our department has to put into that annually with reglazing windows or caulking, replacing window panes. The lighting upgrades are, you know, a lot of these things with the lights and the electrical panel as well, their replacement parts are obsolete. So we're approaching that on a lot of these items for Randolph and Bird. Same with the motor control center that Dr. Armstrong was speaking about earlier with the chiller project and the boilers. The motor control center is a large electrical panel like you'd have in your house, but it's your 600 amp breakers and things like that. It feeds the power to the chillers and cooling towers and larger assets. So that motor control center is starting to fail, and we're having trouble finding replacement parts. So this is what we're trying to plan for going forward with some of these items on here. The repaint, you know, that's cosmetic as well. It needs it. Is it okay? That's you can make your own decision on that. And like Dr. Armstrong said, VCT, it's in good shape. Our custodians maintain it well. It's a strip and wax. It's maintenance, but something that it has long outlived its life expectancy?
To just one that we all know, LED lighting. Has a study been done across schools on that? Just because Randolph and Byrd probably still have some.
They do. And
far antiquated systems.
Chris, our amazing electrician, has actually single-handedly made some of those. Chris Richmond replacements. Sorry, not Neil Shu now. I just mentioned him earlier, but he's gone around and done some of that work on his own, and has made, even in the, I think in the gym at the high school, we replaced those early on.
Yeah.
Randolph and Byrd exterior lighting. So some of that work's been done. I don't think we're in a place where we would need a wholesale change out, because a lot of it's been done partially.
Just having some historical knowledge, many of those things have been on CIPs now. They've worked their way forward to now they're in the 5-year window where they were initially 10 years out, but some of these things have been on plans for a while.
Thank you. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Before we go to the future, I just had a theoretical. Now, how do you come up with the CIP numbers? Like what you have to work with each year? We don't fund, and this goes to the original question you asked is of how should we fund our CIP? We don't fund our CIP right now, so how do you start to know, like, okay, I've got this much to work with as we're getting pretty close to that now?
I mean, Stephanie, you've been on the front line of that more than me here recently. I know there was a time when Dr. Billy and I did that work, and then we would take and do as much research as we could with our capacity to kind of figure out, okay, what's the reasonable cost of this going to be? What's going to really?
Do we give you a number and say, hey, you've got $4 million this year?
No.
It's historically been truly a needs-based.
What are the needs-based?
It's recognizing, okay, we want to be reasonable. We know that there are limited resources. What are the priorities, and what are the things that we really want to elevate now, and what can wait another year? And just in my experience, it has been that approach.
If I might, we had a study done by Dewberry several years ago that did a facility analysis of a lot of these needs and addressed kind of like what time frame, they would need to be addressed. And so some work went into the cost, associated with that. Obviously, you have to apply inflationary, pressures to all of those numbers, which we have historically kind of looked at that and tried to price it out. But, everything is always in a constant sense of flux. So.
Yeah, and the reason I ask is because, as our assessments continue to crush people and the increase in their taxes, I come into these sessions going, I really want to offer some sort of tax relief, whether it's like we only assess on the first 85% of value or whatever. Then I look at these numbers and I'm like, we don't have it. We need a lot more dimes than we have. So how do we balance that? I think it's going to be a critical year for us, because if you've looked since 2020 on how much we have spent versus the previous 20 years, we've got some reckoning to do. And I hate to be that guy, but we got to figure out how to meet these needs while hopefully giving some sort of relief.
Right. That's great. Last thing I wanted to mention is, again, further down the road a bit, but in 2017 we commissioned a long-term facilities planning study. Now, mind you, conditions have changed significantly, financially, economically, every way else since 2017, but it was a well-done study, and it came away with recommendations that we have been implementing, and some of those recommendations I think are populating what you're seeing in the CIP as well. But it looked at historical enrollment, student potential, capacity, facility conditions. We had the facilities condition index in all of our facilities, and that really drove the steering committee's recommendation, which consisted of citizens from the division, both community members, parents. We replaced the new Gouchon Elementary School with a new site. The recommendations at the time were to renovate and partially replace Byrd on its same site, and then to replace Randolph on a new site completely. And again, these were the recommendations at the time. But as we creep closer to that time, I just figured it was a good moment with both boards and staff here today to think about, with all those changes, how do we thoughtfully plan for that looking forward. One thing I did say is that I don't care if we're maintaining a school for one more day or another 100 years, no student in the county should be in a facility that isn't safe, inviting, comfortable, that they should be getting as good experiences as they would get anywhere else in this division. So I definitely don't want to say that. However, is it prudent for us to add on a, you know, a brand new aesthetic, some kind of outcropping on the front of Randolph Elementary School right now? Probably not. That's probably not a really good use of our funds. So we want to maintain these as best we can, as far as we're going to need to. But at the same time, I want us to be sensitive to just how far we take that if we're thinking that, you know, in 10 years, potentially, we could be in a different Byrd Elementary School, and in 15 years be in Randolph, a new school. I mean, think about it, just put it in these perspective, that means the kids who are kindergartners right now, you know, they'll be, I mean, barely out of high school when all this really starts to happen. So it's not that far down the road. I just wanted to put that out there for discussion today.
Do you use Cooper Weldon, or how, I mean, our RTPO we do, and I see some highly suspect numbers. They really, I mean, 40,000 people in 6 years are one of their projections.
That's a hot topic with us, and recently we're right now looking, and we're getting bids actually to do another enrollment and yield study. I know that's part of that is responsive to some of the county's needs around development right now. We want to have good numbers to inform some of your work on that. The enrollment piece in Goochland for schools is tricky, and we've talked about this from day one. A lot of people think, okay, you're going to have 3,000 kids in your division, but that study they did in 2017 never predicted that. I mean, it was pretty thoughtful and fairly well done. That wasn't Weldon Cooper. That was a different outfit that did that no longer is working. But you'll see peaks and valleys. This year we're looking at our ADM, and we definitely saw a little bit of a peak, but some of that is a cohort effect with a potential baby boom from COVID that we're looking at, and it peaks and valleys. But the other thing with Goochland is that I remember my first year here, we had 250 school-age kids in Goochland County who went to St. Catherine's, St. Chris, one private school, really, 2 private schools. You think about that, in a division of 2,500 kids, that's not insignificant. So I don't think you can take a real general broad stroke approach to giving enrollment projections in this division. I think we saw that when we did this work, about 10 years ago. So it's a delicate and very nuanced estimate you've got to get. We have a significant homeschool population as well in our division. So, but we also, and we mentioned this before, we have families who are paying good money for homes in the center of the county. They're not sending their kids to private school because that's not feasible logistically to send your kids to collegiate or Benedictine if you're living 25, 30 minutes away. Some do, I'm not saying they don't, but more than likely, those families are going to be moving their kids to come to our public schools. I've met at least 2 families who have purchased property in the center of the county in the last week who are moving from Henrico County, mainly because of the schools. I'm just going to say it. We see that a lot. So it's a tricky calculation, but we're working to get some bids on updating that right now. We're going to need it for a lot of work we're doing moving forward. That's it. Anything I'm missing or y'all are wondering about that I can help with?
Did the board members have any comments they want to share?
Oh, so many.
I've got a question about the Byrd Elementary. So the original advice was to renovate it, I'm guessing over the summertime, or half of it over the summertime?
Yeah, demolish part of it, rebuild, but maintain the newer wing, I think the community room wing that's now on the end of the building.
What would it look like if we built a new one? Like how would that work? Would it be even on the same property?
That would be the question. I think part of that calculus at the time is that there wasn't as much available land that was either county or school owned, if any, in that area to build one. So whereas Randolph in the eastern part of the county, I know there was always talk about Hockett Road property, which I think is still in play further down the road. So I just don't know where you'd build it if you did a new school or a new site for Byrd. The other part too is that Byrd is, they've got significantly less student enrollment than we've seen at Randolph, so the use hasn't been quite as great. So you're going to have a little bit more useful life there than you would, so you may not have to go through that entire replacement.
Gotcha.
But we talked about that.
Okay.
Would it be worthwhile to consider trying to find a place on Hockey to accommodate the fire station as well as are they compatible? It's a question, I guess, first.
think they are,
Yeah, we have schools that are definitely within striking distance of some of our fire stations. I think and I'm going back a few years for our discussion when we talked about these recommendations, but one thing with Hockett versus where we currently are with Shepherdtown, Cardwell, where Randolph School is, when you look at where that heat map of where your population is, think about transportation efficiencies and what's convenient for families. There was even talks about, do you need another elementary school? I would say, at this point, I wouldn't recommend that, but, so, yeah, I think that's completely in play.
But, was it Monument Farm? Is that, it's got a easement on it, does that preclude us from the school?
Mannequin Farms?
There's a piece of property
Across from,
really close to
Page.
Randolph.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
It truly has a monument on it. It's really
Yes,
cool.
it does.
Good history there. Yeah. Well, board members, I thank you for your work
Thank you,
today.
and the preparation that all the staff has put into this.
Really
Great.
proud of our team and thankful for our collaboration with the schools, because at the end of the day, we're all on the same team. We're all just wearing different positions, different numbers on that same team. And, I'm, as your county administrator, grateful for your thought and partnership here today. There's some things from staff that we needed to hear from you today, and we did. I'm grateful for your approach to the work, and ultimately, we remain committed to providing great recommendations to you for your consideration as we go forward and make really important decisions for our community. So thank you for your hard work today.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Anything else for the good of the cause from anyone?
No, any comments?
Get right back into it.
Speak now, I will hold your peace. All right, meeting adjourned.
Thank you.